You guys have any questions before I start the class and start showing slides? This is your opportunity to unmute yourself and ask me questions if you like.
Yes, sir. I have a question.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
The free websites that you were getting us, I'm pretty sure since you told us to get the domain name, we're going to park it at the free website?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Anybody else got any questions before we get to rocking and rolling? We got about 2-3 minutes if you got a question. So the ones who show up early and stay late always get the most out of it. Just saying. I was about to say I'm not going to go too long tonight, but you know, if I go long, y'all make me a liar. So I'm just going to say, well, I'm going to go easy on you. How's that? We'll leave it at that. But today's going to be lecture, more on me than you. So just make sure that you've got, excuse me, that you've got everything you need to take good notes. And I'm fully cognizant of the fact that I have not sent you your week 2 packets yet. I keep pulling stuff out because I don't want to overload you. And there's some stuff in there that I had in there. It's really more appropriate for next week. So if you got questions, you got about another 30 seconds, and then I'm gonna put everybody on mute. And at that point, I'll go into lecture mode, and the only way you can chat with me is through the chat box. So if you got any questions of me now, speak now, forever hold your peace. You guys getting anything out of this? Because my wife's like, are you going back to your office again? I'm like, yes, dear. So I want to make sure the sacrifice is worth it. So you guys get anything out of it? Yes. Yes.
If you're talking, Sherman, we're getting something.
All right, good. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. All right, so looks like about 30 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and shift into teaching mode. And I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody since nobody else has last chance to ask me a question before I mute everybody. Okay, so from here on out, if you got questions. Yes.
Hi. I want to know if there's a discount for partners to join the apprenticeship program.
Yes, there is. So reach out to Lisa through Need Help, ask Lisa, and she'll take care of you. Normally, okay. No, it's a family plan, so don't tell me you're not a family, but reach out to Lisa.
We are.
And, okay, she'll take care of you. No worries.
Okay, awesome. And then one other question regarding forming the entity. I have an existing LLC within Maryland. Okay. I'm expanding it. There are multiple services I want to offer.
No worries.
Including now real estate investing. What is the best way to distinguish the different services, just for marketing and branding, so that I can have like different names, so that it's not
form another entity.
Form another one. All right. So I do have a forfeited investing LLC many years ago.
Yeah, I mean they're gonna make you pay $100 a year, so it may or may not be worth trying to revive it.
That's why I was trying to figure out what's the best way to put it all under one LLC with different names.
Sometimes, sometimes it isn't. If what you're doing is so different than the other thing, sometimes you're just better off having sort of like an umbrella, like having an umbrella or a main thing, and then having separate LLCs, which is, that's what I decided to do. I kept my Virginia Corp, but then I have about 2 or 3 active LLCs. And every time I do a real estate project, I put that real estate activity in its own LLC, so that if something happens to one, it doesn't spill over and affect the other. Legally speaking, like you could have a situation happen in your real estate thing that you just decide, you know what, best thing to do is just put this out of its misery. And if you do that, it won't spill over into the other entities if you've run your business properly and structured it properly and put your silos in place. So, and if you're doing different kinds of things, you might be better off doing it that way anyway, to be honest with you.
That makes sense. Now, if the services quasi overlap, meaning I can find a way to kind of justify, what do you suggest as far as distinguishing the services under?
So the easy
For instance,
answer, the easy answer is I don't know you long enough and I don't know you well enough.
Got it.
And I do, this is, by the way, this is the kind of thing I do in the private coaching. Because
Okay.
I just had this conversation with somebody, what's today? Yesterday. I literally had this conversation with somebody yesterday about how they sort of move some things around. But I'll give you a more generic answer by saying, okay, this is what I do. And I oftentimes say to my VIP and platinum folks, you'll learn as much from what I do as from what I say, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have Tradewinds International, which is my operating company, aka Tradewinds International Holdings. I have Real Investors LLC, doing business as the Real Investors Academy. That's the training coaching company. I've got Tradewinds Realty Partners LLC, which is my real estate advisory, real estate investing, actively doing real estate stuff, because that's very different from the education stuff. I have East Baltimore Street Partners, which is one specific project that's a live project right now, a development project. I've got Lakeview Avenue Partners, which is an apartment building, and those are both LLCs. I own a couple properties in trusts, but I wouldn't do business through a trust because it just gets awfully complicated. And I think I have maybe one or two other LLCs that hold some property. So if you're going to be an active business owner and you're going to be an active investor, you're going to be popping out LLCs every couple of months. So you might as well just go ahead and get in the habit of, doing it right up front, having good paperwork, good files. And then at some point you sit down with a lawyer, again, an estate planning attorney, and say, okay, here's the mess I created. Help me organize it and clean it up.
I really appreciate this.
No problem. And by the way, and then when they send you the bill for $2,500, you're like, no big deal, because I got the money to do it. As opposed to, I just paid $2,500 and I don't know what I'm doing, right? But I tell you the one thing, think about it this way. I call your business line, right? What businesses are you into?
I have a scholarship consulting. I have a health and wellness scholarship consult. Can you hear me?
Consulting, yep.
I have health and wellness coaching.
Yep.
I just passed my life, health, and accident insurance exam yesterday, so I'm adding that.
Right.
That can be a service offering for business owners, real estate owners in need of key person insurance. So there's a way to kind of overlap those two, and on and on and on.
Okay, so now I call 301-555-1212. And because you don't probably have a full-time receptionist yet, you probably have a voice message thing, which is very common today in business. And it says, thank you for calling K. Pinkett and Associates LLC. We are your full service real estate, insurance, health consulting.
Yeah.
For insurance policies, press 1. For real estate services, press 2. For hot dogs, press 3. So it may be better to sort of, again, not necessarily an LLC for everything, but sort of organize stuff in logical buckets. And so here's the real estate group over here. Well, the real estate group is your consulting, your investments, and your active real estate doing deals. And then your insurance thing is over here, and then your health and wellness thing is over there. And each one of those buckets might have 2 or 3 different activities that, quite frankly, doesn't warrant its own LLC yet. But at some point, when it becomes a real live business activity. So I'll tell you a real quick story, and then we're going to get started.
Thank you.
I decided to become a real estate investor in 2001 after the birth of my son. So when Claire and I got married, she had 2 kids from a prior marriage, so sort of add water, shake, shake, instant family. And then Dave came along about a year and a half later. So after Dave was born, and Claire warned me of this, she's like, okay, I know you love my kids, but when the baby comes along, you're going to love them totally different. I'm like, yeah. Well, I was there in the birth room at Columbia Hospital for Women, and I was like, oh my God, all of a sudden it's like a whole new level of responsibility. And just something hit me saying, you need to do this real estate thing. So I use Tradewinds International, my existing business, which I had been using for years. At that point, we'd been in business for 15 years or so, to start off doing my real estate activity. And then when it became pretty clear, but I was a government contractor, I was a federal government contractor. So then when it became clear that the real estate thing was really going to start to take off, I set up a separate company. So initially I had a DBA doing, so it was Tradewinds International doing business as Tradewinds Realty Corp. And then when it really started to take off, I'm like, you need to put that in its own thing. So then I formed Tradewinds Realty Partners, LLC, and put all the real estate activity in that until I started doing deals. And then I put separate deals in separate LLCs. And then people started asking me to, can I look over your shoulder? Can I see how you're doing it? And then all of a sudden the coaching, teaching, mentoring thing became a thing. And it was really Robin Thompson who advised me to go ahead and start a real estate group. And then there was Robin Thompson who advised me to start doing some real estate events. And I went to the Marriott. I went to the BWI Marriott, and we booked half the ballroom to do an event with like 200 people. Fortunately, my wife has a background in events management, so I let her handle all that. And I'll never forget it. She's on the phone with the BWI Marriott, and we're running this whole thing out of the house, right? She's on the phone with BWI, and the BWI Marriott says, "What do you want to call the event?" I don't know. And I went online and I searched for some domain names, and guess what? The domain name realinvestors.com was available. I said, call it Real Investors. That's how Real Investors was born. I wish there was a more intricate story, right? I did research and then I polled people. No, Marriott said, what do you want to call your event? I don't know.
Right.
Real Investors, call it Real Investors. So I registered realinvestors.com. And the event was supposed to have 200. Our first event, we had 400. It was very clear that people were hungry to learn more about real estate investor education. And next thing I know, Real Investors became its own thing. So guess what? Now I'm setting up a separate LLC just for the real estate education piece. And then when we applied for certification to be a trade school, because the kinds of things that we want to do in Maryland is what I call a deep blue state. Y'all know what I mean when I say deep blue state? Maryland's a very consumer protection oriented state. We're not Texas by any stretch of the imagination. We're not Florida, we're not Georgia. And so when we wanted to start offering real estate classes, the state told us, you have to apply to become a trade school. And that whole process took a number of years to get through. But if you want to do it right, you want to be legit, you do what they tell you to do. Otherwise, they come shut you down. And as a part of that certification process, they're like, well, what do you want to call your school? And they kept on saying, your school, your school, your school. And well, Real Investors LLC didn't quite fit what they were asking us to do. So I ran up to Preston Street and I registered a trading as name, a TA. Some people call it doing business as, but in Maryland, you have to actually register it. It's like $75 for 5 years. So we registered the doing business name or the trading as name, Real Investors Academy. So it's Real Investors LLC, trading as the Real Investors Academy LLC. And that seemed to make all the people at the Maryland Higher Education Commission happy because now we were actually calling ourselves a school, an academy. And they were also very quick to say, you can't call yourself a university unless you get certified. That whole are not certified, accredited. And that whole accreditation process is, that's a jungle all into itself. But we could call ourselves an academy without going on through full-blown accreditation, but we couldn't call ourselves a university. So I knew Donald Trump was going to get himself in trouble early on. So you can't use that in Maryland. You can't be calling yourself a university and you're not registered with MHEC and got accredited and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
Trust me, he didn't listen to me.
Yeah.
But when you call
I want
yourself,
to keep my mouth shut on that.
I know, we all need to. But when you call yourself a university, it sounds good in marketing. But certain states look at that term with a deep amount of scrutiny, and it's like if you're not doing the things that
accredited
and you can't use that word. And so when you go
Maryland Higher Ed is all over that.
Hello. And so when you go before Maryland Higher Education Commission, you have to declare, are you an accredited degree granting institution, in which case you can use college or university, right? Or are you a professional trade school like a barber school, a real estate school, in which case you can use the word school or academy. So we opted to pick academy. So I know that's a very long-winded way to answer a very simple question.
Very helpful.
But
Thank you.
And again, it sort of speaks to my core philosophy, which is, why don't you just go make some money first and then decide how you're going to give it back to the state? and not get too wrapped around, checking this box and that box. Now, I'm not saying, obviously, I'm not saying be out there as a sole proprietor or be out there with no asset protection. I want you to.
I just didn't want to pay a lot of taxes and have to keep up with all those filings. That's overwhelming. I don't want to get bogged down in
that's
that.
the other thing. It's going to cost you a couple $100 a year on your annual renewal, which is quite frankly why I have some of my properties in trust and not in LLCs. But anytime you try to go borrow money, it's just a colossal pain in the butt. I think I told you guys the story of putting solar panels on my roof and decided to finance it. I'm back on the phone with the solar panel finance company again today, sending them uploading the documents again for the umpteenth time that they already got, and their answer is, well, call us back tomorrow to see how we did. But you're right. No, you're right. You don't want to have so many entities that every year you're shoveling out these checks. And I made that mistake too. We actually at one point had like 20 entities, 20 LLCs, and we've now cut it back to about 9 or 10. Some of which were just businesses that we no longer pursued. Some of which were properties that we decided it was better to hold them in a trust and then have the trust sort of roll up into the LLC. But it's everybody would like to believe that business and being in business and operating a business is all sort of very clean, like kindergarten, and taking the crayons down and putting the crayons away, pulling the glue out, putting the glue away with all nice little cubby holes. No, business is messy. It's just messy, and you just try to make the least amount of mess possible. And then, quite frankly, if you're a creative type of person, which many of us are, and I know I certainly am, I have a fair balance between sort of my creative side and my sort of like, don't go there because it's going to blow off your foot side. That sort of like stay in the lines kind of thing. And I get both of those from my parents. My father is very, very conservative and very by the book, which is probably why he was able to spend 20 years in the Army and then 20 years working for the federal government, right? And my mother is very creative, and I sort of get a little bit of both from each. And I'm disciplined enough to know that I'm creative enough to know that I need to have employees because my messes are way too big. And so I need to have people come behind me and clean it up. Otherwise, it's
smart.
It's scary.
Thank you. I don't want to take away from the class, but
no. I mean, obviously I can talk about this kind of stuff all night long, but again, thank you for asking. And I hope that some of what I've shared with you, both today and also in the class, but I always say to people, if you really want to know how I do things, which to me is kind of the best teacher, because to some degree I can't give legal advice and I can't give accounting advice, but that doesn't mean I can't tell you what I do. I oftentimes say, watch what I do as much as listen to what I say, because what I do speaks a lot for how I run my business and how I run my affairs and how I organize things. And if anything I say or do is like, gee, I think I could learn a little something from this guy, don't just listen to what I say, but actually watch what I do. And that's and don't be afraid to ask me, well, Sherman, how did you do it? Because I'm never shy about telling people exactly, what I do, which may or may not be totally out of the book or out of some webinar or out of some seminar, but it works for me. And that's, at the end of the day, that's what I need. I need something that just works for me so I can live my life the way I want to. So.
This is so helpful. A lot of aha moments just from this stuff.
All right, we'll see that in your homework. All right, this is a Real Investors event. We start with a prayer. Would you please join with me? Dear Lord, we thank you so much for your wonderful hand upon us. We thank you for the blessings of being able to live in this country and to be free people, despite the fact that some folks don't want us to be. Lord, we thank you for having your hand upon our leaders. And we just ask that you continue to have your hands upon us, and that in all things that we do, we're a reflection of you in Jesus' name. Amen. So I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody. Feel free to use the chat box to ask me questions. I'm going to try to go fairly quickly today so we don't get go too long. I know I've been a little guilty of going a little too long, but I'm trying my best. So if everybody can see my slides, can I get a thumbs up? Can I get a thumbs up? Oh, I need to go to the Facebook page so that I can actually. All right. Oh, there you guys are. Sometimes my screen pops over to the right. We need to bring it back over to the left. Okay. So you guys can see everything? Thumbs up? Yeah. Okay. So real quick, I am still endeavoring to get you guys your week 2 booklets. Forgive me for being a couple days late. I just had to pull some more stuff out of there because I just felt like I was giving you too much. When I finished yesterday, I just really felt like I had gone too long and given too much, and I don't want to burn people out. So I pulled a couple things out that I really do think should be in week 3 booklet, but I promise to get that to you tomorrow. Real quick on the homework. Again, you guys who are downloading the mobile MLS, the Matrix, the our MLS, the Bright MLS app, thank you for posting your pictures. Feel free to post your aha moments as well as your other homework, but again, please post it in the right section. So if you're posting to the day 8 homework, yesterday's homework, what I really want to see is the screenshots from your mobile device. You know, you guys know if you're using the mobile MLS or any app, you can do a real quick screenshot. The little trick is on an iPhone, I guess 11 or 12, 11, 12, 13, 10. You just squeeze the volume button, the top volume button, and the home button. You squeeze them both at the same time, and it'll do a little screenshot, and then you can upload that, assuming you have the Facebook app on your phone. So I want to see you guys using that app. That's the main thing I'm looking for. So I'm not going to go there today. I'm not going to go there right now because I have seen it periodically. I've been going in. I get little notices every time somebody posts to the Facebook page. So I am going in. I'm looking at it. I am responding to it. But the main thing is I just want you guys getting comfortable having that tool on your mobile device and actually starting to use it. Okay. Because the more comfortable you are with it, when I start actually giving you guys instructions on how to do searches and stuff, you're not fumbling around going, okay, how do I turn on the app? What does this mean? Just get comfortable with the app. That's what I want you to do for the next couple of days. Okay. All right. So here's where we are. We're in sort of part 2 of what I call hacking the matrix. And we're really starting to get into, okay, building my team and who do I need to make sure, who do I need on my team right now to make sure that I'm doing this thing properly and start getting some deal flow going. And so we'll be talking about team building really for the next 3 days. And then on the day after tomorrow, we're going to actually hire our first strategic hire. So we're here. We're on part 2 of hacking the matrix. We're going to be into the water boy tomorrow. And then the day after, we'll be talking about doing this first and then our first strategic hire. So it literally is just a day or 2 away. Okay. Next up, I want to talk about, again, this is hacking the matrix part 2. And if you guys remember, I talked about yesterday about how approximately 80% of all single family house deals flow through the MLS and 20% are FSBOs. And we talked about there's nothing wrong with FSBOs or MLS deals. Ultimately, we want to do both. And it really was just this function of where do we start first? And then we talked about phase 1 versus phase 2. And I don't have that slide, but remember we talked about phase 1 versus phase 2. And we talked about MLS deals really sort of represent phase 1. That's where we should start for all the reasons we discussed yesterday. And then we're going to pivot into doing phase 2 deals, which are the FSBO deals. But we really want to start with phase 1. So I want to tell you guys a little story. And this happened to me when I was 21 years old, 20 years old, somewhere between 20, 21. I think it was 20. And I was a student at Towson University. That's where I went, my undergraduate alma mater. And at Towson, which I know is still true because my youngest son went to Towson and several of my nieces and nephews and my sister went to Towson, but more recently, my son and nieces and nephews went to Towson. They have something called GURs, General University Requirements. And the GURs are classes that you must take, even if they're not inside your major, to make you a more well-rounded person. And that's one of the hallmarks of a liberal arts college, which is what Towson is. Towson is for those of you who are not familiar with it, it is the 2nd largest university in the state of Maryland, although it has a larger undergraduate population now than University of Maryland College Park. It's about 23,000 students, most of whom I'd say 80% are undergrads. And it's a liberal arts college as well as being a public college. And so there are classes you have to take in certain categories, even if they're not necessarily in your major, and even if you don't necessarily want to take them. And so when I was at Towson, we had to have a certain number of hours that you could either take like art or something like that. And I didn't feel the need to take art because, you know, my mother's an artist and we had plenty of opportunities for art. You know, I learned how to do photography when I was a kid. I learned how to paint when I was a kid. I learned how to do clay sculptures and all kinds of other stuff. I know the difference between watercolor and oil-based paint, right? And one you use water, one you use turpentine. I know all that stuff. And I learned that because my mom really sort of made sure that we did that stuff when we were kids. So I decided that I would take PE classes, physical activity classes, because they also counted towards General University requirements and credits. And so I took I made the conscious decision to take some classes that I might not normally take. So I took fencing, I took tennis, and I can't remember the other ones that I took, but just sort of like, you know, when in your lifetime will you get a chance? I wish I'd taken golf back then, but I didn't. But I did take tennis twice. I took the intermediate and the advanced, and I also took the fencing, and I really enjoyed it. But I remember one day when I was taking the tennis class, which of course you go play tennis on the tennis court. It was spring semester, and I think it was spring semester, probably my sophomore year. And there was this guy who kept on showing up at the tennis courts. And if you've ever been to Towson University, it's a very beautiful part of Baltimore County. It's very bucolic. It's very rolling hills kind of stuff. In fact, that's where Kevin Plank, who owns Under Armour, he's up in that area, although a little bit further north, about 5 or 10 miles. But there was this guy who was hanging out at the tennis courts who was not a student, clearly not a student. We were in our, you know, teens and 20s, and this guy was probably in his 30s or 40s, probably 40s, to be honest with you. But he would hang out at the tennis courts and meet some folks to play tennis. And our tennis class was 2 times a week. And I kind of noticed every time we were there, he was there. And this guy was dressed to the nines. He had these immaculate tennis whites on, and he had this really fancy sports car. I don't remember if it was red or silver, to be honest with you, but I think it was a Mercedes convertible. And so what's that? What was that, an S50? Anybody know? What's the Mercedes convertible? The really nice one. And I think it was in silver. And I just remember that this dude was just sort of living that country club life, right? Now, it didn't occur to me that he's living a country club life, playing tennis at the tennis courts of a public university and not a country club. But he just had that sort of country club aura all over him, right? And one day I sort of worked up the nerve to go over to him and say, hey, you know, you're here every time we're here. Do you mind if I ask, what exactly do you do? And the dude was very quick to respond. He says, oh, I'm in the real estate business. I'm like, really? Well, whatever it is, I want in. Like, anybody ever have that experience where you see somebody is just like, I don't know what that dude does, but whatever he's having, I'll have too, right? And the guy's name, I'll never forget, his name was Bob Burns. And it turns out he was the recruiter for the local real estate company up in Baltimore, the biggest real estate company up in Baltimore. And in fact, it was kind of a setup. He was kind of looking for guys like me. You know, it was, you know, young guys who are full of energy, who were playing tennis and sort of fit that profile that he could recruit for his real estate company. It was called O'Connor, Piper, and Flynn. And they were the 800-pound gorilla. They were the Keller Williams, Long and Foster of their day. Back in the day, I'm talking, you know, early 1980s, 70s, late 60s. The 800-pound gorilla in DC was Shannon and Lux. And the 800-pound gorilla in Baltimore City, Baltimore County was O'Connor, Piper, and Flynn. And so Bob Burns was the recruiter for O'Connor, Piper, and Flynn. And he explained to me that they actually had a class that they taught at night in the business school at Towson. And it was a semester long, which probably means it was about 40 hours. And if we took the class, not only could we get the 3 hours credit in the business school, but we could also use it to get our real estate licenses. And this was 1982 or 83, I can't remember. So the following semester, I signed up, and turns out Bob was also the instructor, which is probably why I remember his name. And I took that class and learned a great deal about sort of the inner workings of real estate and how real estate worked at that time. And I also wound up getting my real estate license before I graduated from Taos University. And that's how that kind of all came about. And I'll never forget, in the very first day of class, and by the way, Bob was very different. He was very different in the classroom than he was on the tennis court. On the tennis court, he was very jovial. In the classroom, he was very serious. And I'll never forget, in the very first night of the very first class, Bob said, there's one rule that you need to know, that you need to understand, and that is the real estate commission wants to have one gun pointed at one head. And I'm like, whoa, what's that mean? And what he was talking about is that in the eyes of the real estate commission, which is the body that regulates real estate and governs real estate agents and has oversight of real estate agents, they don't want to try to police all of the real estate agents. They want to police the brokers. And what he was saying is the real estate commission has a gun, proverbially speaking, pointed at the head of the broker, and the real estate commission expects the broker to keep the agents in line. And if you stop and think about it, bringing this sort of up to speed, according to the Maryland Department of Labor Licensing, that's the agency, the state agency that has oversight over all licensure, and the Real Estate Commission is a part of DLLR, or Department of Labor Licensing. There are currently 40,000 active licensed real estate agents. 40,000 in the state of Maryland. Now think about that for a second. I live in Bowie, Maryland. The population of Bowie, Maryland is about 50,000 now. So basically, 9 out of 10 people who live in Bowie, Maryland, if they were real estate agents, that's a lot of folks running around with real estate licenses. And since real estate licensure has a bit of a revolving door around it, people get their license and it doesn't work out the way they want it to work out, because they suddenly find out you actually have to work, especially up front, to build a book of business before the thing really goes ka-ching, ka-ching. I got a very good friend, Yolanda Muckle. And Yolanda was president of the Maryland Association of Realtors, president of the Maryland Association of Realtors, and now she is a member of the National Association of Realtors. And I remember Yolanda when she first got started in the business, because I knew her husband, Craig, very well, because Craig and I served together for a number of years on the Prince George's County Chamber of Commerce. And I remember when Yolanda first got started as a real estate agent, her background was, I believe, in radio. I think she either worked for Radio 1 or BET, and I think she was in sales, selling commercials. But I remember when Craig started talking to me, because he knew I was in the real estate business, about his wife, Yolanda, getting her license and going into the business, and whether or not she should hang in at Long & Foster or other companies. And I'm pretty sure, knowing Yolanda, you know, she's a smart cookie. She had already made a decision. But I remember saying to Craig, you know, if she really wants to do the real estate thing, Long & Foster is a great place to learn. And I would probably say the same thing also today of Keller Williams, although back then Long & Foster was definitively the 800-pound gorilla. So I have watched Yolanda's career as she's progressed. Today, you know, and I'm friends with her on Facebook, she's popping deals 2-3 times a week. But I remember when she first got started as a licensee, as a real estate agent, and it wasn't popping clients and closing deals 2-3 times a week. There was some work that went into it, and there was some struggle that went into it, and there was some laying the foundation that went into it. And the first couple of years, she was really out there hustling to build that book of business. And now she's got so many clients referring stuff to her that it's no wonder that, you know, she's closing the kind of deals she does. But quite frankly, a lot of people get a real estate license and they think that simply having a license is the license to mint money. And they find out that's not true. As I oftentimes say, having a real estate license isn't going to mean that you're going to make money any more than having a driver's license means you're going to win the Indy 500. You know, getting the driver's license is where it starts. Getting out on the track and learning in the classroom and learning on the track and seeing what works. And it just takes time. Well, same is true in the real estate business if you decide to get your license. And I oftentimes say to investors, don't get your license first. Learn how to make money first, and then circle back and get your license later if you decide you really love the business, because there are some advantages to having a license, but there's no advantages in terms of making money of having a license. The stuff I'm teaching you, in fact, the stuff I'm teaching you guys right here, right now, by the time we're done with this class, this 21-day class, you'll know more about real estate investing than what 99.9% of the real estate agents out there who have licenses know. And that's also a part of tonight's conversation and the topic of conversation, because I don't want anybody thinking or believing that just because you're talking to somebody who's got a real estate license, that they know what they're doing when it comes to investing, because they don't. And part of my teaching and my slides tonight is to show you why that is. So anyway, back to that, the early days when I was, 20 some years old, I think it was 20 years old, sitting in the real estate class with Bob Burns, getting my real estate license. He said, the Real Estate Commission wants to have one gun pointed at one head. And if I look today at the numbers, I understand exactly what Bob's talking about, or what he was talking about, which is you have 40,000 licensed individuals, people who have the real estate license, people who took the 60-hour class, then sat for the exam, passed the exam, and then chose to hang their license with a broker. No, by the way, in Maryland, that's how it works. You get your license and you hang it with a broker. You don't just independently work as a real estate agent with your license at the commission. It doesn't work that way. In fact, if you have a license and it's quote unquote parked at the commission, you are not allowed to transact business because your license is not considered to be active. The only way your license is considered to be active is if you quote unquote go hang it with a broker. Now, call real estate commission and say, hey guys, tell me exactly, it's right there on the website that you got 40,000 active. How many brokers do you have? Young lady put me on hold, said a lady who knows the answers in the meeting, and then a lady in the meeting had to call me back, blah, 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 blah. And the best answer I got, and I wish I was it seems like it's a simple question. I mean, if it's a license, you go to the database, you hit a couple of keystrokes and it tells you how many people have a license, but that wasn't the answer I got. So the answer I got was that there's approximately 1,500 licensed principal real estate brokers, and principal means something. In Maryland, there are 3 designations. There's broker, there's associate broker, and there's sales associate. For the most part, brokers or broker is the person who's licensed and runs the firm, and that's whose head the gun is pointed at. And in Maryland, we call them the principal broker. If a real estate brokerage firm has multiple brokers and multiple offices, a broker or associate broker can run those various offices, or somebody called an office manager. And we'll get to that in a second. Maryland calls people who are licensed agents, because you have to be licensed agent for 2 years minimum, and then you have to sit in a 120-hour class. But people who are licensed Maryland agents who sit for the 120-hour class and successfully pass the exam to become a broker, Maryland calls them associate brokers. But that doesn't mean that they're the number 2 person in charge of a firm. It just means that they could go out on their own and be a broker, but they choose not to. And I had to have an issue. I had an issue with a young man who was associated with our firm for a little bit over a year, who I literally had to walk him out the door because he consistently had lapses in ethical behavior. And one of those ethical behavior lapses I found out after he left was he was telling people that he was the number 2 guy at the firm because he was the quote unquote associate broker. And nothing could have been further from the truth. In Maryland, the term associate broker simply means that you could be a broker on your own someplace else, but you choose to remain at a firm where you're not the principal broker. So associate broker is just a term to designate somebody who qualifies to be a broker, but they're not the principal broker. And so long story short, after he left, I started getting all these complaints. People ask, well, where's so-and-so, where's so-and-so? And I said, well, he's not here anymore. Do you mind if I ask why you're looking for him? Well, he owes me money. Oh, well, he promised to do this for me. He didn't do it for me. Oh, how could he have left your firm? He was the number 2 guy. I'm like, no, he wasn't. He was what the state calls an associate broker. In most brokerage firms in Maryland, you're either going to have the principal broker or you're going to have an office manager. And that office manager is a licensed real estate professional. That office manager could be also an associate broker, but the term office manager in Maryland has a very distinct meaning, which means it's somebody who's running the office, but they're not the principal broker. And in the eyes of Maryland, again, because they want to have one gun at one head, they hold the gun at the head of the principal broker. But if somebody's an office manager, they share some responsibility for oversight of the agents. But at the end of the day, the Maryland Real Estate Commission does not want to police all the agents inside of an office. They're going to come after the broker. They're going to come after the office manager. And for the most part, unless what the agent does is really egregious, it's the broker and the office manager who are going to have to go before the commission and plead on the mercy of the court along with their agent, because inherent in being a broker, principal broker, excuse me, and inherent in being an office manager is that you also agree to have oversight of any and all of your agents. So that's kind of important to know. Now, I should have said this from the outset, but I didn't, so I'll say it now. What I'm going to be talking about today is specifically Maryland. However, I could very easily be talking about Virginia. I'm a principal broker in Maryland. I'm a principal broker in Virginia. I'm a principal broker in DC. The topics we're covering tonight are the same. There are a couple of little nuances here and there, but we're going over the basics today because today is quote unquote part 2 of Hacking the Matrix. And in order for us to go into the matrix and make it work for us, we kind of need to know what the matrix is and how it works. Well, the matrix in this conversation is a mechanism by which the states regulate real estate brokers and real estate agents. And by understanding how these brokers and agents are regulated, in other words, understanding the rules they got to play by, we can not only know the rules, but we can bend the rules and we can dodge the bullets. Y'all did see the Matrix, right? Y'all like, what the hell is Sherman talking about? When Neo's on the roof and he leans back and then he's plucking them, right? All right, stick to the script, Sherman, because y'all are not in the mood for, clearly you guys are not in the mood tonight. Fine. I'll keep my jokes to myself. All right, so 40,000 licensed real estate agents, approximately 15,000 licensed brokers. As far as the Real Estate Commission is concerned, they want the broker to be responsible. And if the agent screws up, the broker is equally culpable unless the broker can demonstrate, here's the hook, here's the key. If the broker can demonstrate, I told him not to do it, it's in the file, I told him not to do it. Then when you go before the Real Estate Commission, the commission no longer looks at the broker, all eyes are on the agent. And quite honestly, and this is what we need to know as investors, brokers not only adhere to the state rules, but brokers are allowed to come up with their house rules. And the Real Estate Commission gives brokers a certain amount of latitude to enforce additional rules above and beyond what the state says. So if a broker says, we're not dealing with investors in this firm, if you want to work with investors, you need to move your license someplace else, that is not discriminatory. And the Real Estate Commission will back that broker up 100%. Because if there's one gun pointed at one head, and the state's basically saying, we don't want to regulate 40,000 agents, brokers, we want you to care and feed and manage them agents, then the broker's got to have a little bit of latitude to say, well, wait a minute, if I'm in charge, I need to be totally in charge. So in addition to the state rules, if I want to implement some additional rules to keep my agents in check and keep me out of trouble, then I have the right to do so. And the only thing the state says is whatever rules you put in place cannot be discriminatory, right? So you can't say, well, our brokerage firm only works with Black women. No, that's discriminatory. You can't do that, okay? But if you want to say, hey, we don't want to work with investors, well, investors are not a protected class. If you want to bar your agents from working with certain groups that are not what's quote unquote a protected class, you're more than welcome to do that. Well, investors are not a protected class. In other words, it's not sexual orientation, it's not skin color, it's not religious beliefs, ethnicity, right? Those are protected classes. Real estate investors are not a protected class. So if a broker says, we're not working with any investors in here, the Real Estate Commission will back them 100%. And if the broker says, there's certain things I don't want you doing in my brokerage firm, and the agent does it anyway, and it blows up, when they go before the Real Estate Commission, the first thing the broker is going to do is pull out his folder and say, here's all of the different policies, procedures, and emails that we sent out telling this agent that what they were doing was not allowed in our brokerage firm. And therefore, if that person's in trouble for this activity, it's on them, not on me. And they take the gun that's pointed at their head and they redirect it over onto the agent and they step aside. Is everybody sort of getting where I'm coming from here? Give me a thumbs up if you're following what I'm saying. Not only do brokers have to administer and enforce the laws, but brokers can also put their own policies in place and put additional restrictions on their agents, and the real estate commission will back them up 100% as long as it's not discriminatory. Okay, so principal broker versus everyone else. The principal broker is the person who's ultimately responsible for all the activities. They set the rules. They're the ones that get in trouble if their agents get in trouble. They're the ones who, in their fiefdom, are king or queen, as the case might be. An associate broker is not the number 2 person in the office. An associate broker is somebody who's taken the additional steps to qualify and earn the broker license, but they choose not to go out on their own. They choose to affiliate with a firm, and they're not the principal broker. They're somebody who could be a broker and qualifies as a broker, but in the eyes of the state, they're an agent. Office manager, however, has a very clear distinction. And many of us who sort of my age and my stature think of an office manager as sort of, you know, somebody who was in the administrative pool or secretary who worked their way up, and they're sort of just doing sort of ministerial stuff. That's not what an office manager is in the world of brokerage. In the world of brokerage, an office manager is somebody who's managing a brokerage office. Oftentimes, they are an associate broker, but sometimes they're just an experienced agent. As an example, Craig Northrup was an office manager for many years before Long & Foster set him up in his own franchise. There were years, decades went by that people didn't realize that Craig Northrup was an agent at Long & Foster. He wasn't a broker. He wasn't even an associate broker, but he was the office manager for the office originally in Columbia, off of right off 32 and I think 175. And then he expanded and sort of created his own quote unquote little franchise within the Long & Foster system. And ultimately he wound up becoming an associate broker. And then ultimately Long & Foster set him up in his own company. But for the longest time, he was the office manager. So when you hear the term office manager, and again, this is one of those things that's kind of unique to Maryland. Other states have adopted the terminology, but I don't think it's true in DC, and I'm unclear right now in Virginia because we don't have multiple offices in Virginia. But in Maryland, somebody who's in a real estate brokerage operation who's designated as the office manager means that's the person in charge of that office. And by law, they are a licensed real estate agent, and oftentimes they are a licensed real estate associate broker. But office manager in Maryland means they're in charge of that office. So when you get to brokerage firms that have multiple offices, somebody has to manage the office. The principal broker can't manage all the different offices. The principal broker is responsible for the overall activity of the firm. And oftentimes in bigger firms like Long & Foster, a principal broker is not even managing an individual office, but anybody who's responsible for the day-to-day affairs and the activities of the agents in that office is called an office manager, okay? So, next thing I want to touch on before I jump to another slide. As I said before, most real estate agents don't know jack diddly about working with investors. They don't know jack diddly about investing. It's kind of shocking and surprising. And I've never done an official like Survey Monkey poll, and I don't believe there's any data out there if anybody's done a poll like this. Maybe National Association of Realtors has, but I haven't found it. But I have informally surveyed people who have real estate licenses and just sort of on a side, if I meet somebody new, if I'm in a meeting or something, I'll say, hey, by the way, why'd you get your license? And I believe, based on sort of my informal survey over the years, that about 30%, more or less, 30% of the people who have real estate licenses, they didn't get that license to take people around in their cars or do the kind of traditional. They got their license mainly because they wanted to become a real estate investor. And they thought that was the path towards becoming a real estate investor. And then they are grossly got the nose bent out of shape because one of the first things that they hit, roadblocks they hit, is they suddenly realize that a lot of brokers and office managers do not want them doing real estate investing. And I'm going to explain why that is in a second. And a lot of office managers and real estate brokers don't want them bringing investors into their office. And I'll explain why that is in a second. So it's like, I got my license to become a real estate investor, and now you're telling me I can't even do this stuff. And if I do this stuff, I'm not supposed to tell you I'm doing it. That's awful. It is, but it is the way it is. And again, in a second, I'll tell you why it is. Now, some people will be like, well, you know, to get your license, when I got my license, it was 40 or 45 hours, and then it crept up, and now it's 60 hours. So you have to have 60 hours. I can tell you for a fact, there's absolutely nothing in the 60 hours that people go through to get their real estate license that has anything to do with real estate investing. I know that for a fact. Why? Because we are a real estate school. We are an approved real estate school. And in order to get that approval, I had to put the curriculum together for us to be approved. I had to actually show what people are going to be taught during their 60 hours. Fortunately, when you apply to become a real estate school, you have one of two choices. You can either write your curriculum from scratch, which only a handful of really crazy people do, but it's been done. Or you can turn to a company called Dearborn. Dearborn's out of Wisconsin. I think they may have originally been out of Michigan, but now they're out of Wisconsin. And Dearborn is one of the oldest companies in the world providing curriculum for trade schools. And one of the group of trade schools they provide curriculum for is real estate licensing programs. And Dearborn literally wrote the book. They have what's called the Principles of Real Estate book that's used in all 50 states. And then they come back and do what's called a legal supplement for each individual state, because each individual state has their own individual laws. But the Principles of Real Estate book and those legal supplements are more or less the officially adopted textbook for all real estate schools around the country. And so when it came time for us to apply to become a real estate school, I turned to Dearborn. Dearborn gave me the education. They gave me the slides. They gave me the syllabus. And that's what I submitted to the state. And the state said, yep, you cover all the things that are necessary according to the law. Well, one of the things that was in the Dearborn course, chapter 22, was an hour-and-a-half lecture on real estate investing. And in many places around the country, they get to chapter 22. It's literally the last chapter before you're done. So it's the last thing that agents get taught before they're sent out to go get their licenses. However, in Maryland, approximately 6 or 7 years ago, the state of Maryland decided that Maryland needed to have its own ethics course. Now, in the Dearborn book, in the Dearborn curriculum, in the curriculum that's adopted nationwide, there is a 2-hour lecture on ethics. But Maryland, being a deep blue state, said, oh, it's not good enough for you to talk about ethics with respect to nationwide. We in Maryland have our own unique kind of ethical issues, and we want to see an hour-and-a-half on Maryland ethics, whatever the hell that is. I know what a Maryland crab is. I found out a few years ago what Maryland fried chicken is, but I don't know what Maryland ethics is when you're already teaching 2 hours on ethics. Nonetheless, the law is the law. And what happened for Maryland and happened for us is you had to add another hour-and-a-half. Well, if you add another hour-and-a-half and it's already a 60-hour class, something got to come out. So guess what came out? Put it in the chat box if you can guess what came out of the Dearborn education or the curriculum, the 60-hour curriculum using the Dearborn textbook. Anybody want to guess? Yes, the chapter on investing. So I know for a fact there's not a single real estate agent who's gotten their license in the past 10 years, let's say, because that chapter was optional anyway. There's not a single agent who's had anything on investing. They haven't. Somebody said, well, Sherman, what about the CE credit? Because every 2 years, if you are a real estate licensee, a real estate agent, you have to take, I believe, 12 hours of continuing education. It says 15, but that's a requirement of the broker. I messed that up. It's 15 if you're a broker, it's 12 if you're an agent. Well, out of the 12 hours that you have to take every 2 years, 10 of them are already prescribed. It's fair housing. It's always fair housing. It's ethics. It's brokerage relationships, agency relationships, and I can't remember what the other one is. And then you get an hour-and-a-half of electives. Very few agents take the hour-and-a-half electives on investing. How does Sherman possibly know this? Because 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we applied for, through the Real Estate Commission, we applied for permission to offer an hour-and-a-half class on real estate investing, specifically for real estate agents. So if you're a real estate agent, you can come to the class, you can get an hour-and-a-half of CE credit. And when we submitted the paperwork to the Real Estate Commission, they're like, oh, you're the first one to ever offer this. You mean the first one to ever offer this in Prince George's County? No, the first one to ever offer this in the entire state of Maryland. And since the woman who's at the Real Estate Commission has been there for decades, I kind of think she meant you're the first one to offer this in like the past 20 some years. And quite frankly, all we did was grab the chapter out of the Dearborn book and added a couple things that to sort of freshen it up, because it really was meant to be a primer on investing, not the whole enchilada. But the bottom line is this: you guys, as a result of sitting with me for a couple hours a day, more or less, for 21 days, are going to know far more about real estate and real estate investing than any real estate agent you ever come across, unless that agent has made the special effort to learn this stuff. So I don't want anybody walking around thinking, oh, I can just go grab me any old real estate agent off the street to help me crack the code and hack the matrix, because they know as much as Sherman and some of these other folks who are real investors, who are agents and have a life, they know as much as those guys do. They don't. And I mean, and that's not sort of a veiled commercial for real investors. Trust me on this, because I'm going to tell you guys, as we get into this, if you got a real estate agent who's a friend, you got a real estate agent who's a family member, and they know what they're doing and they're on board, use them, right? You don't have to use a real investor agent to get done what you need to get done. I got people who I've mentored outside the state of Maryland, lots of them, who are using what I'm teaching you guys in the 21-day course. Clearly, they're not using real investor agents because they're in Atlanta, they're in Southern California, they're in Chicago, right? But the things I'm sharing with you today as we lead up to it, because the day after tomorrow, we're going to talk about hiring that first strategic hire, which, oh, by the way, is a real estate buyer's agent, right? And we're going to talk tonight, tonight's part of why you do it. And then day after tomorrow is how you do it, right? You want somebody who understands the investing game. You also want somebody who's not in a hostile environment that's hostile to real estate investors. Because you don't need to be hiring somebody, and this has happened. I mean, I've seen this happen. Part of the reason why we started a brokerage firm as a part of the Real Investors family, right? Now, the brokerage firm, again, is a separate LLC. It's a separate entity because the state real estate commission made us do it that way, right? But here's the deal. Back before we had our own brokerage firm, I was teaching this 21-day course. And by the way, I've been teaching the 21-day course twice as long as we've had a brokerage firm. And people would go find a real estate agent, and the real estate agent is like, oh, yeah, I can help you. I can, what you need done? Oh, yeah, I can help you. And inevitably, 1 month, 2 months into the relationship, the person comes crying back to me saying something like this: my agent just fired me. Why'd your agent fire you? Were you doing something stupid? No. Their broker doesn't want them working with investors. Their office manager told them they had to stop working with investors. They got too many complaints about my lowball offers, and the office manager's upset because it's impacting the reputation of that firm. Let me see if I get this straight. The law says all written offers must be presented. So you're writing offers and getting your agent to present the offers. And because some people don't like the fact that you're not willing to offer exactly what they're asking for in the list, they're calling the office manager of that agent and saying, what the hell's wrong with your agent? They're sending over all these lowball offers for this client. And because of that, the office manager is telling your agent to fire you because they don't want to be embarrassed. Yeah, Nikki, that is crazy. And yet it happens. There are some real estate brokerage firms that are, quote unquote, more concerned about their reputation than actually making money for their client. I'm not going to say who they are, but I'm going to tell you, without even saying who they are, why that is. Okay, and I'm going to get to that in a slide or two. But the point I'm making is not all real estate agents are created equal, especially if you're looking to do investing. And there are some brokerage firms that are openly hostile to clients who want to do investing. And it is crazy, and yet it is what it is. And we're going to talk a little bit about why it is, okay? So why is it that some brokers don't want their agents working with investors? Well, let's look at all the things that the broker, the principal broker, has to deal with to successfully run a real estate office, okay? So things that real estate brokers have to do to stay compliant and make money. And again, because this is a heavily regulated industry, it's not just a matter of putting out a sign saying, I'll broker for food. They have to comply with different rules and regs. So the first set of rules we got to comply with as a broker is the Maryland law of agency. And I forgot one. I ought to put it in there. Let me go ahead and type it in there because I can type stuff in here, right? Right? First one I should have put in there, and forgive me for my oversight, but federal, I'll just say federal laws and just leave it at that, all right? So federal laws. First one is federal laws. So things like, fair housing. There's certain things that brokers and agents can and cannot say in their marketing, and if they violate it, they may very well violate fair housing laws, and then they're looking at big time fines from the federal government, okay? So first thing that they got to do is comply with federal laws. Then they got to comply with Maryland state laws. And again, if you're in Virginia, Virginia state laws. And if you're operating in multiple states like we do, different state laws. And one of the ones I'm going to share with you tonight is crazy because Maryland has a certain law that Virginia doesn't have. I'll get there in a second. Got to comply with contract law and employment law. Big time lawsuit going on right now because I think it's Redfin. Redfin pays their agents a salary and not a commission, but they want them classified as independent contractors so they don't have to pay their health benefits. And the state of California is suing them because they're saying, whoa, hang on. It's long established that a real estate agent is not an employee, but if you turn a real estate agent into an employee, then you got to W-2 them. You can't 1099 them. But Redfin's like, well, that's not our business model. So, and again, every state's kind of different, and it's always a moving, shifting set of rules. So employment law, they got to deal with their E&O insurance carrier. So let me talk about that one just for a quick second. Every year, real estate brokerage firms have to renew the errors and omissions insurance, E&O, errors and omissions. And there's a survey that you have to fill out as a broker that kind of goes like this. How many agents do you have? And usually it's about the same number you had last year. And what kind of continuing education are they going through? And it's kind of the same thing every year. And are you using Board of Realtor contracts, or are you allowing your agents to use, on behalf of their clients, non-Board of Realtor contracts? Well, as the fish face said, I mean, I say fish face, Star Wars, it's a trap. It's a trap. That question's a trap. If you say anything other than 100% of your agents are using Board of Realtor contracts, your E&O insurance is going up. It's a trap. It's okay. No, we're only doing about 50% Board of Realtor contracts, and then the other 50% is stuff that people download off the internet. No, we're not asking them whether or not they have run it past an attorney, and no, we're not even getting that's a surefire way to have some kind of lawsuit happen. And therefore, it's a surefire way for your E&O carrier to get really, really nervous about, hey, are we going to have to pay out because this guy's letting his agents run amok? So every broker says, of course we're using Board of Realtor contracts, 100% compliance to make sure they don't have to pay any more E&O. And then every year when it's time for the E&O carrier, E&O policy to be renewed, they send out an email, or they have a brokerage meeting. And they're like, okay, guys, just a reminder, make sure you're using the Board of Realtor contracts, because if you use anything else, I'm going to kick your butt out of here. Like, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. We're using the Board of Realtor contracts. Okay, we're good. Because nobody wants your E&O insurance to go sky high. Okay? Next question. How many of your agents are involved in investing? And the answer is always 0. None of my agents are involved in investing. And by the way, I can say that in all good faith at Real Investors. You want to know why? Because all my agents use LLCs when they invest, and they are not their LLCs. It is not a single real estate investor agent, not a single diamond member that real investors out there buying deals in their own name. Otherwise, I'd have to tell the E&O carrier, well, all of them. But because they're not their LLC is their clone, and they're the managing member of their LLCs, none of them are doing investing. Their LLCs are doing investing. Some of y'all just had an aha moment. Good for you, okay? Now, not every brokerage firm can say that, because not every brokerage firm has a broker who understands investing and understands the importance of using LLCs and clones and entities. So Sherman, what happens in that one instance where one of your agents decides that they want to do investing in their own name and they don't use an LLC? Well, I've already told them don't do that. I've already got it in a file telling them not to do it. I've already told them that at the meetings. So if and when something blows up and the E&O carrier says, Sherman, we got a problem, one of your agents was involved in a deal and they were doing it in their own name, and I'm like, which one? I'm like, okay, well, here's the file where I told them not to do it. So therefore, you can send them a letter saying our E&O policy doesn't cover this claim, and they're on their own. And they need to go hire a lawyer, because when they get sued, there will be no E&O insurance to cover them. And part of what E&O insurance covers is a lawyer when you get caught, when you have to go before the real estate commission. So you're going before the real estate commission on your own, Jack, because you didn't listen to the broker. That was your choice, all right? So when my E&O policy comes out and says, how many of your agents involved in investing? My answer is none, because they're not investing on their own name. They're doing it through their LLCs, right? Now, what happens if they're doing something through an LLC and something blows up? Well, if they were acting in their capacity as a real estate agent, they're covered. But if they were acting in their capacity as the managing member of their LLC, then they and their LLC need to go find a lawyer. Good time to have Legal Shield, okay? But if the brokerage is involved some way, somehow, we still get a lawyer appointed, and the person under their brokerage, under their agency, and what they were doing as an agent gets covered, and at least there's a lawyer on the spot to help advise them a little bit, okay? If it ultimately winds up being it was just them totally on their own in their LLC, then we're going to part company. But at least you got the benefit of some lawyer who's at least telling you, okay, you got this issue and this issue and this issue early on in the game. And that's kind of a nice thing to have. But that's what E&O insurance covers, right? Other question that the E&O insurance carrier asks, volume of transactions, what percentage of them were investment deals? But that doesn't really hurt you so much as having agents who are involved in investing on their own and using non-border realtor content. Those are the two places they have the greatest exposure. So what happens if you wind up using an agent and their broker has decided that rather than sort of putting down rules that makes it safe to invest, their broker just decides, you know what, I don't even be bothered. I don't understand. By the way, most brokers who today, see, when I got my license umpteen years ago, it was roughly about 50% independent brokers and 50% franchises. And of the independent brokers, some were larger than others. So Shannon and Lux, O'Connor, Piper and Flynn. Long and Foster was really sort of just coming on the scene back in 1982, 83. But you didn't have the proliferation of franchises like you got today. Today, everything's Keller Williams, or, and technically, I don't think Long and Foster's a franchise. Well, no, I think Long and Foster does sell franchises now, but everything's like Keller Williams or Exit, right? Coldwell Banker. Like 90% of the real estate brokerage firms out there today are franchises. Well, who's the principal broker at these franchises? Mainly real estate agents that were top producers someplace else. And then they decide they want to run their own show, so they go buy a franchise. And one of the reasons for buying a franchise is it's kind of a business in a box. The franchise company tells you how to do everything. But the franchise companies are not selling franchises, teaching people how to run real estate investor shops. They're out there telling people how to run shops to go get listings, because that's, quite frankly, used to be, it's not so much anymore, But for the past 30, 40, 50 years, getting listings was the most lucrative part of the business. And I'll explain that in a second. I don't get it, but just understand this. Today, most real estate brokerage firms are franchises. And most of the people who own the franchises had experience in the field as top producing real estate agents. They don't know anything about investing unless they made the time and effort to go learn it. So as an example, Jonathan Runlett, who owns multiple exit franchises today, he learned the real estate business at Realinvestors. Before he came to Realinvestors, he was a Honda car salesman. He came to Realinvestors when the economy collapsed. He had the benefit that his family's heavily involved in the hotel business. I think his family actually one time was involved in the Waldorf Astoria up in New York, and on his wife's side. So he knew a little bit about the hotel, but knows a lot about the hotel business, a little bit about investing. But he came to Realinvestors, and it was really at Realinvestors he learned the real estate business, and he was one of the early ones to get his real estate license when we started the brokerage firm. And then he was a team leader running one of the teams as a licensed real estate agent, and then made the decision when somebody was ready to sell off their exit franchise to buy a couple of exit franchises, and found out he really had the hang of it, and wound up buying in and becoming the regional owner. And I think he's got Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania. And he makes a boatload of money as both the principal broker and owner of those exit franchises. But everything he knows, he'll tell you that he knows about investing. He learned that and got a start here at Realinvestors. And I pretty much guarantee, although I shouldn't speak for him, that he's not having his agents running around doing investing. I'm sure of that. And well, Sherman, how could you say that with any definition? Well, if I went out and bought a McDonald's franchise, right? McDonald's franchise, am I going to be out there selling, I don't know, pig feet? Well, I like pig feet. Well, actually, I don't like pig feet. But if I did like pig feet, I like pig feet. Why can't I put pig feet on the menu of my McDonald's franchise? Because it would violate your franchise agreement and they could snatch your franchise agreement away. I pretty much guarantee you exit in their franchise agreement does not have anything written in there that talks about real estate investing. I'm sure of it. I'm definitely sure of it. Why? Because before we made the decision to start the brokerage firm at Realinvestors that specializes in working for investors, I looked at buying a franchise. I looked at buying a Coldwell Banker franchise, and then Century 21, and Keller Williams, and Exit. I looked at all of them. And all of their franchise agreements pretty much said the same thing. You're going to open up an office and you're going to specialize in getting listings. It's all about getting the listings. Because when you get the listing, back then, those days, which are coming to an end, you were typically splitting the commission that the seller was willing to pay 50-50. But as time has gone on, and operations like Redfin and now Zillow and Redbricks and others, we're seeing that the listing agent, their part of the commission is getting smaller and smaller, while the buyer's agent, the buyer's broker, is kind of held the same. It's kind of an interesting trend. But the trend is real compression, quite frankly, on the listing side. But most of these brokerage firms that operate really got started in sort of the 80s and 90s. I mean, Keller Williams sort of like is leading the charge. The oldest brokerage firm franchise is Coldwell Banker. Coldwell Banker was founded in like 1902 in San Francisco. And then Keller Williams was founded in Austin, Texas, when Gary Keller almost went bankrupt working for a local brokerage firm in Texas. And he sort of strategized with a couple of people and said, hey, what can we do to make a difference? And they started talking about, building a business that's based around your life. And then they added in a component that kind of looks like Amway, where you get some like recruitment income and some override. And that's what made Keller Williams, quite frankly, the biggest franchise in America and in the world today. And then, of course, Exit looked at their model and stole it. And then there's another one called EXP now, which is sort of a virtual franchise that sort of stole it. But the basic fundamental difference between Keller and everybody else at the time was that sort of override for the people that you recruited and helped train. But all of those businesses, Keller Williams, Coldwell Banker, EXP, Century 21, Long & Foster, all of those franchises, which really sort of dominate the business today in residential real estate, they're all based on getting listings. They're not based on doing investing. And many of them have stuff in their franchise agreement that says you're going to agree to not do investing. That would violate your franchise agreement. So that's, again, another reason why a lot of brokers, quite honestly, don't want to have their agents doing investing. And if you buy a franchise, think of it like buying a McDonald's. You sell on the menu what McDonald's tells you to sell. Well, what if I want to sell McRib? You got to wait for 6 months. But you ain't putting no pig feet on the menu, not a McDonald's. Same is true if you own a real estate franchise. You're going to do what the franchise agreement allows you to do and nothing else. Because if you violate the franchise agreement, the franchisor can snatch your franchise away from you, the franchisee. Okay? So bottom line is this. To run a brokerage firm, you got a whole lot of people telling what you can and cannot do. And the last thing in the world you need is some quote unquote rogue agent doing his or her own thing, messing everything up. And in the eyes of many brokers, you coming in there as a real estate investor, getting their agent to do something that you want them to do as opposed to what the broker's telling them to do, could create some conflict. So day after tomorrow, we're going to talk about how do you hire the right real estate agent. And I'm even going to give you a checklist to help you in that decision-making process. But you need to also have a heart-to-heart conversation with them before you get started, asking the question, well, how does your office manager or how does your principal broker feel about you working with an investor? And if they say, oh, it's okay, I know it's okay, you ask, okay, well, have you actually talked to the office? No, I haven't talked to them, but they seem to be okay with, they're doing it. But brokers out there doing it, I'm sure that if you sign an agreement with them, don't be surprised when you start getting all hot and heavy and doing what you're supposed to do, what I'm going to be teaching you over the next couple of days. Don't be surprised if they come back at you and go, my broker says I can't work with you no more. My office manager says you got to go. Because once you start kicking up some dust and making something happen, and it flies in the face of the house rules or the franchise rules, or doing some stuff that neither the office manager nor the broker really understands, they're going to cut you loose. Because they don't need a rogue client, a rogue agent swimming upstream. If everybody's in formation getting listings, moving listings, and the occasional, yeah, we work with some buyers, and occasionally we got like a land deal or something we're doing it as a listing on behalf of our client, the seller, and you come on in there talking about you want that agent to assist you in putting 5-10 offers out a day that the only thing that the person's going to object to is the price, and that person starts getting a lot of quote unquote complaints because of the lowball offers, don't be surprised if they cut you loose. I'm just saying. So have that conversation up front so you're not hot and heavy into getting things going, and all of a sudden one of your team members quits on you halfway on your run to the Super Bowl. You don't want to be that team that your number one rusher goes, well, unless I get a new contract. Dude, we're in the playoffs. We're on the way to the Super Bowl. Yeah, well, I need a revised contract before I get out there and catch any more passes. You don't need that in your operation. Just saying. So have those conversations up front. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll have that conversation in a couple of days. So brokers got to deal with E&O insurance, requirements of the franchise agreement, agent demands, employee demands, marketplace competition, client customer demands, and of course the advice of their corporate attorney. Hey, I got an agent who's doing this stuff. What do you think? Dude, what are you, crazy? Your operation's generating $20, $30 million a year. And you're going to ruffle some feathers for one client who wants to get a couple of wholesale deals done? Cut him loose. Don't be surprised, okay? It got nothing to do with you. And you'll hear all kinds of baloney like, my broker says that's illegal. It's not that it's illegal. It's that it violates the house rules. It violates the way they've chosen to establish their business. If you got somebody who can help you and they got a green light from the office manager and the broker, you're good to go. But on the other hand, if they haven't had that conversation and you start generating a lot of activity and start generating a lot of questions, and the questions are like, well, what are you doing over there? Why you got somebody putting out so many offers and like you're not even close to what the listing price is? Well, that's how you get deals done, folks. But not everybody understands that. In addition to which, not everybody knows everything. And let me tell you something, when you hire a real estate agent and they don't know an answer to a question, the last person they're going to ask for advice from is you, the client. They're going to first go to their office manager. They're then going to turn to the broker. They're going to ask some of the other agents in the office. But you, the client, you're the last person who's going to know they don't know what the hell you're talking about. They're going to give you that, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I got it. No problem. And as soon as they get off the phone with you, they're over there talking about like, what does he mean by ARV? I ain't never heard that. That wasn't on the exam when I got my license. What does that mean? Office manager's like, I have no clue what you're asking. Let's go ask the broker. Hey, broker, what does ARV mean? I don't know. And you're counting on that person to get certain things done, and they don't even know what you're asking them to do. But as far as they're concerned, everything's hunky-dory. Let me tell you something. Recently, I had a property that we rehabbed, and I was going to turn it into a rental. But because it didn't appraise up front, I had to put a whole lot of cash into that deal. And my number one philosophy, write this down, my number one philosophy is if you are out there buying, fixing, rehabbing, and renting properties, or if you're out there buying, fixing, and flipping properties, or reselling or rehabbing properties to sell, as soon as you're close to getting that property done, you put that baby on the market to rent, and you put that baby on the market to sell. And whoever brings you the check first, that's what you do. Because you don't ever want to have a property out there that you think you're going to rent, and for whatever reason, the rental market changes on you, which it can. For one reason or another, there's a glut of rentals on the market, and you can't get the price you wanted to get. And then you decide then and there, okay, well, maybe I'll sell it. And then you go ahead and start the process of selling, which may take 2 or 3 weeks. And now you're 2 or 3 weeks behind, especially if you're using a hard money lender or got investors that are sort of like, I want to get in and out real quick. Put it on the market to sell, put it on the market to lease at the same time. I'm just saying. We'll get more into that in a week or so when we're getting into the, okay, getting out of the deal and getting paid, okay? But here's my point. I haven't sold a property I've rehabbed in years, like 10, 15 years since I last sold a property I rehabbed. Most of the stuff I rehab today, I'm keeping as rentals. I'm building my rental portfolio or doing commercial deals. So when the time came to put the property in the market, I'm turning to some of the other agents at Realinvestors. I'm calling Jesse, I'm calling Stephanie and say, hey, I got to click a button on the MLS listing. I haven't uploaded a property to sell in 15 years. There's some new buttons here. Which ones do I push? And they walk me through it. And they're like, why are you selling anyway? Well, you know, look, this is my rule. Okay, I got it. And then the offers came in. And the offers were overwhelming. And the offers were way higher than what I paid for it. All right, I think I need to sell. So when I got the offer, the written offers in, rather than me sitting in a room trying to make a decision on my own, I sent the 3 best offers. I think I got 5 in one day. I sent the 3 best. There was 2 like I knew they were kind of like, that just sounds like the okie doke. That sounds a little shaky to me. So I took the 3 best ones and I sent them to Jesse. I sent them to Stephanie. I said, hey, you guys got time to talk about these? And I got on the phone with them. Well, what if you're doing real estate investing and you've hired an agent to work with you and they don't have a clue what you're asking? Because remember what I said, by the time this class is over, you're going to know way more than they know. You will have had way more real estate investor education than they've ever had. At best case, they may have had an hour and a half of real estate investor education because they came to one of our seminars, one of our hour and a half CE credit seminars. But chances are they didn't even have that. So you know more than they know, but they don't want to let you know that you know more than they know. So they're like, okay, it's okay, got it. And then when they get off the phone with you, they turn to the office manager, and the office manager is, I don't know. Let's call a broker. And they call a broker, and the broker's like, I don't know. And you think everything's okay, and there's not a single person in that particular real estate office or that particular real estate brokerage or that shop that has a clue as to how to help you get your deal done. And you won't find out till way later down the road that every time your agent said, I got it, what they were really saying is, I don't know what's going on. And they were letting your stuff sit on the corner of the desk while they were busy off trying to get more listings. I've seen it, folks. I've seen it. So make sure it's not just, I got an agent that knows what they're doing, right? Whatever it is I need to have done, but make sure that they are like, they got some resources. Now, I'm not saying Real Investors has got a monopoly on the real estate agents. Understand. There are some real estate agents out there who do understand investing. They do know how to hustle. They do know how to work with investors. And they're in real estate shops that have a handle on how to work with investors. And if that works best for you, do it. But don't get bamboozled into hiring your cousin because they just got the real estate license and mama said, well, you know, baby, you knew they were getting their license when we were at the family reunion at the Christmas party, and you really ought to help them out, throw them a bone. Why don't you hire them? It's all the same money. Well, it's not the same money if the deal doesn't close. Then you're broke and they're broke too. What the hell did that help? So I'm just saying, make sure you understand that you know more about investing than probably the agents you're going to if you're going to sort of the traditional real estate shops to find the talent that you need. I'm just saying. And don't be surprised if you get a little halfway down the road and they dump you, because when you really get to cooking and start putting a lot of offers out and you start getting a little bit of flack about quote unquote lowball offers, that now all of a sudden you're causing a ruckus with the office manager or the broker, and that broker turns to that agent and says, what you doing? Don't be surprised. All right. So moving right along. The vast majority of real estate brokers were at one time top producing agents, particularly true in a franchise situation. That's the reason they bought the franchise, because they knew how to sell real estate. They just didn't know how to run a brokerage operation. And when they bought the franchise, it all sort of came prepackaged. Okay. Top producing agents become top producing agents because they comply with the matrix. They are the matrix, because the matrix is really all about listing properties for sale. To be truthful, it's the dirty little inside secret, right? I'm giving you the inside window. They're probably going to take my realtorship away. But the dirty little secret is that approximately half the agents in the business are running around getting listings, and that's pretty much all they do. And approximately half the agents are running around getting buyers. And the ones who get the listings know that the ones who represent the buyers are going to do all the work, but they're going to split the commission. And the ones who run around getting buyers know, hey, all I got to do is find a buyer, because if I can get them pre-qualified, get them to fog up a mirror, get them pre-qualified with a lender, and I get them excited about a house, and that house closes, I'm getting paid. So half the agents are running around finding buyers, half the agents are running around finding sellers, and most of the big franchises out there that are selling franchises to help the brokers recruit agents and get listings. That, my friends, is the matrix. It's all about getting listings, convincing people that you need to use a real estate agent, convincing people that your real estate brokerage is better than another real estate brokerage for getting that property sold and listing it with this firm, and then rinse, repeat, do it all over again. That is the matrix. We're coming in saying, we're going to tap this system y'all built to get ourselves some deals, to put some stuff under contract and legally, ethically, legitimately wholesale it to another investor. And we don't give a rat's butt about listings. And we really don't care all that much about buyer, because we'll put stuff under contract and then sell it to the buyer who pays us the most amount of money. And we're never going to live in that house and have no intention of living in that house. So we don't care about bathrooms and basements and blah, 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 blah. All we care about is it ugly enough that the average buyer is totally not interested because it's too offensive, but I can turn around and put it under contract and take it to a rehabber and pocket a couple bucks, ka-ching, ka-ching. And after I've done it about 2 or 3 times, hire a virtual assistant to do 90% of the work so I can keep 90% of the profits, and then move on to another real estate investing strategy. We're hacking the matrix. We're not joining the matrix. We're not trying to be a part of the matrix. We're hacking it. We're going in and grabbing what we want and running right back out. And everybody else who wants to spend the rest of their life listing properties or representing buyers, have a good life. Keep doing what you're doing. But we're not here for that. We're here to snatch what we want and run back out and get paid. Anybody like that idea, give me a thumbs up. So I'm not here to teach you how to get listings. I'm not here to teach you how to get your real estate license. You want to get your real estate license? Make some money first. And if you really like it, we do offer the 60-hour class and you can go through it. But I'm telling something, if you really want to make money as a traditional real estate agent, be prepared to eat pork and beans for 6 months to 12 months, because that's how that business works. I'm not prepared to eat pork and beans for the next 6 to 12 months to make some money. I'm a hack the matrix, not join it. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox now. Anybody got any questions on that? All right, so here's the deal though. This system that's in place, it's been in place for at least the past 50 years. When I took that class as a 20-year-old college, I think I was a sophomore, maybe a junior. I think it was a fall semester of my junior year. When I took that class with Bob Burns, the system had already been in place. It was changing a little bit, but the change was franchises coming on the scenes, right? As opposed to individual brokerage firms. But the whole concept of buyer agency and seller agency and putting folks together and getting your license, that whole thing had already been established. Yeah, the technology has changed. Back then we had dot matrix printers printing out the MLS. Today we get the MLS on the phone. But the concept of an MLS, I mean, think about it, multiple listing service. Who in their right mind would call looking at properties on your iPhone the multiple listing service? Even the name is freaking archaic. It goes back 20, 30, 40 years. They've had MLSs since the 1960s, since computers first came on the scene, right? And here we are using apps, and they're still using terms from the 1960s. Stuff in this business, the matrix, hasn't changed in decades. And quite frankly, if it changed too much, it would implode. The whole system is based on people who have a license representing sellers and people who have a license representing buyers. And some of them, a fraction of them, happen to be investors. But the average people hiring real estate agents to sell are selling relatively pretty houses. And the people who are hiring real estate agents to help them buy are looking for houses to live in. And we don't fit in either one of those categories as investors. We are here to hack the matrix, not be a part of it. But the matrix itself has stood for decades. And there's no reason to believe it's not going to continue to stand. Yes, it's changing. Yes, some parts of it are changing. The big change right now is that the commissions being paid to the people doing the listings is going way, way down and will continue to do so. But that's not going to make the matrix implode. It just means that more and more agents are going to be out there looking to represent buyers, because in our world, the matrix world, that world, the commission for both sides is still being paid by the seller. Someday that'll change, but it's not changing anytime soon. So I'm saying to you guys, we're learning how to hack a system that has stood for at least 50 years and will probably continue to stand for at least 50 more, quite honestly. Okay? All right. So main thing that we need to know is that the seller is still paying the buyer's commission. Well, why should we care? All right, let me tell you why I should care. This is the anatomy of a typical transaction. Now, those of you who are in the business or been around the business for a while, you kind of get this. Hang in there with me, even though this might be sort of remedial for you, right? In the world of the matrix, you typically have a seller, and the seller has said, you know what, I want to sell my house, and I believe the best way to sell my house is not to do a FSBO, but to turn around and put it in the hands of a real estate agent and let that agent find a buyer for me. And for the most part, seller is totally ignorant to and doesn't care how the magic gets made. It's a total black box to them. All they know is they hired a real estate agent, and the real estate agent is going to take care of it so they can go back to their day job. Well, what's their day job? Whatever it is that's allowing them to buy a new house or move across country or forcing them to move across country, and that's the reason why they're selling the house. I don't know what their day job is, but it's not the buying and selling of real estate. They're not investors. The vast majority of the population are not real estate investors. And therefore, they've decided, you know what, the best way for me to get rid of this property, whatever it is put it in the hands of an agent. So the agent comes along and says, hey, look, this looks pretty good. I need for you to clean up the property a little bit. And the person says, no, pushing back. No, it is what it is. Get the best price you can. Well, I could get a higher price if you clean it up. I ain't cleaning it up. It is what it is. All right. Well, here's the deal. In our marketplace, typically folks are paying commissions between X and Y. 5%, 6%, 7%. There was one brokerage firm that tried to do 7% commissions, and the whole industry said, no way. And the client said, no way. So let's assume for a second we're talking about a 6% commission. And that seller's agent says, okay, 6% commission. Typically, that commission will be split between me and the buyer's agent. So I am the seller's agent. I am the listing agent. And you, the seller, are going to pay the commission, but I will split the commission 50-50 with the buyer's agent. The seller says, I don't care how you split it. Just get the house sold. Boom. So it goes into the MLS, advertised as is, where is, all the different stipulations, all the different agreements, all the paperwork. And then it says in a place in the MLS that you don't see and you will never see unless you get the agent side of the MLS, agent access, which you don't have. What I gave you was client access, not agent access, but in the agent access, there are agent comments like, hey, there's a bonus if we get it closed by a certain date. And here's how much of the commission I'm willing to split with you. So the buyer's agent says, hey, that sounds pretty good. And I got some clients who are interested in that neighborhood. So I run a list of properties that are available after having secured the fact that I'm going to get paid a certain kind of commission or a certain kind of commission plus bonus. And then I present it to my buyer. And if they do the same thing I've done with you, give you access to something like HomeSnap or Listing Book, you will see all the attributes of the property. But what you will never see is the deal that I cut directly with the seller. I'm sorry, the seller's agent in terms of my compensation. You will never see that. You don't know if I'm getting a bonus. You don't know if I'm getting a 3%. You don't get to know any of that stuff because that's in the agent comments. You don't see that. You, the buyer, think, oh, he's showing me all the great properties. I'm thinking I'm showing you the properties where I can make a couple bucks. Now, ethically speaking, we're supposed to show the client everything. But what if I say to the client, look, I'm going to be showing you properties and I'm going to get paid by the seller. Seller's paying my commission. You're like, wow. So I don't have to pay you anything? Not really. You know, our brokerage firm has what's called an administrative fee. And when we get the settlement, you'll have to pay an administrative fee of approximately $500. But otherwise, everything I do on your behalf is being paid by the seller. You're like, I love that idea. I get to hire you, but I don't have to pay you. That's right. However, I normally charge 4%. If the seller only offers, let me make it simple. I don't want to complicate it. I normally charge 3%. If the seller, for whatever reason, is only offering 2.5%, you'll have to come up with the other half. Well, I don't like that idea. Well, think about it this way. When you go to the store to buy groceries, you have to pay for the groceries. But if you hire somebody to go to the store to buy your groceries, then you have to pay an additional fee above and beyond the groceries. I'm here to offer that additional service. I charge 3% in this example. If the seller only pays 2.5%, they're paying 2.5%, which 2.5% you don't have to pay, which I will look to collect 0.5%. So the buyer may very well say, well, I don't like that idea. So at that point, after the buyer's agent has explained it a couple of times, then they look them in the eye and say, okay, are you telling me to not present any deals to you where the seller's not willing to pay a 3% commission? Because if you're telling me that, I'm willing to do that. No. I want to see everything. Okay. But if I show you something and there's a difference between what the seller is willing to pay and what I'm telling you I charge, you got to be prepared to pay the difference. And at that point in time, they'll have that conversation again. And the person, remember how I said, I'm going to show you, like in this particular deal, they're only offered 2.5. If you want me to go forward with you, are you willing to pay the half? If they say no, then the agent's got to make a decision. Am I willing to cave and cut my percentage, my commission by 0.5%? Or am I just going to say, okay, tell you what, I'm not going to show you the property? It would probably be best to go ahead and cave on the 0.5%. Otherwise, if this buyer is firm about, I'm not paying anything because I don't want to pay anything just out of principle, then this buyer's agent is going to say, okay, great, I'll only show you the properties where I'm getting a 3% commission. And they have that conversation once and they never have it again. It's not a problem. If I got that, you got to give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up if you got it. All right. So let me ask you guys this. What if you're the buyer and you're an investor? Do you like this idea of hiring somebody and not paying their salary? Anybody like that idea? The idea of hiring somebody, but you don't have to pay the salary. I love that idea. I have been an entrepreneur and I've been in business since 1989. When I had my aha moment in the real estate business, wait a minute, are you telling me I can have employees that I don't have to pay until and unless I make money? I love that idea. I absolutely love it. So when I talk about hacking the matrix, one of the first things we got to understand is that the broker is in charge and the broker gets to make the rules. And we are going to go out and find an agent who represents us in a brokerage firm where the broker's cool with the agent doing real estate investing stuff. And when it's time for the agent to get paid, we're not paying them. The seller is. Got it? Have I got that? You got it? Let me hear you say I got it. Say I got it, put it in the chat box. If you got it, say I got it, put it in the chat box. Great, great, great. Now, if you have an agent that has a particular expertise and you want that expertise, you need that expertise, and they say to you, look, I charge 4%, and you say, okay, well, what's the going rate now? Right now, what are you seeing in the MLS and the agent comments? And it's 3%, then you realize you got to pay 1%, then you need to be asking them, okay, what's your advice on how I cover the 1%? And if you don't like what they say and they're not willing to budge, you may need to go get yourself another agent. Or be satisfied with they're only going to bring you the deals where they get paid a full commission. And if there's a difference, a discrepancy between what the seller's willing to pay and what they choose to charge, you're either going to have to pay it or balk or negotiate your way through it. Got it? Okay. Shiva, hold that question. I'll get to it in a second. So let's keep going. Does everybody understand this basic concept of the construct of the matrix? Seller hires seller's agent, buyer hires buyer's agent, seller pays commission for both. Does everybody understand that basic core foundational concept construct of the matrix? That's how it works. So one of the great things about going after MLS deals is you're not paying this person for the skills they bring to the table. If you are pretty good at administrative, if you're pretty good at writing stuff up, if you're pretty savvy on the computer, don't ask this person to do that stuff. Ask them to do the things you're not good at, like negotiating deals, like talking to agents, like possibly talking to agents and sellers. I've literally seen, believe it or not, I mean, when you're in this business long enough, like I've been, you see everything. I've literally seen sellers hire sellers agents talk to buyers, and the seller's agent realizes they're so weak at what they do, they turn to the buyer's agent and say, you talk to my seller for me and tell him what you want him to do. I've seen it. That's crazy, but I've seen it. Because they realize, hey, the only way this deal is going to close and I'm going to get paid is if I let this other person who knows more than I do talk to my client and convince them that this is the way to go. I've seen it. It's not supposed to happen that way. Technically, it's an ethical violation, but I've seen it. I've seen it. Okay? So here's all you need to know. You as the buyer, because that's the situation and the condition we find ourselves in, starting off hacking the matrix, you as the buyer, you get the services of this person fundamentally for free, because it's the seller who's paying their commission. and they don't get paid unless you have a payday. Your interests are what I call mutually aligned, even though you're not paying for them. All right, next thing we need to know, something called fiduciary responsibility. Fiduciary responsibility, and I'll talk about that in a split second as to what exactly that means, but understand this. The seller's agent has a fiduciary duty to the seller, and the buyer's agent has a fiduciary duty to the buyer. This is the construct of the matrix. In the 1960s, maybe 70s, everybody worked for the seller. We didn't have buyer agency. What we had was something called sub-agency. Don't worry about it. You don't even need to write it down. It will not be on your exam. But sub-agency meant that everybody worked for the seller. Why? Because the seller was paying the commission. And the logic at the time was, hey, if the seller's paying the commission, then shouldn't both of these agents work for the seller because the seller's paying for it? But the problem was the real estate commission started getting all these complaints, quote unquote ethics complaints of, hey, I, the buyer, told my agent something in confidence, and they went ahead and told it to the seller. And it put me at a disadvantage, and I'm mad. And the real estate commission was on the quote unquote horns of a dilemma. Well, technically, if the buyer's agent is a sub-agent, then their fiduciary duty really is to the seller and not the buyer. In which case, they're not really a buyer's agent, they're really a seller's agent. Because, but the buyers are like, I don't understand that. I don't understand those legal gobbledygook. If I tell somebody a deep, dark secret, like, yeah, I'll pay an extra $30,000 for the house, but in order for me to pay an extra $30,000 for the house, I have to raid my kids' college education fund, and I'd rather not do that. But I love the house that much, and if that's what it comes to, I'll pay an extra $30,000. And the agent goes, well, tell you what, why don't we just offer X and see what happens? And then they turn around and go straight to the seller and go, hey, I got a client, excuse me, I got a customer, they wouldn't call him a client. I got a customer who's willing to pay X, but the truth of the matter is they got $30,000 more cash stashed away somewhere. So if you tell me that the price is X plus 30, I'll go back and tell them, sorry, but that's what it is. Dirty, stinking, filthy agent. So the real estate commissions across the country started taking a look at this issue and said, you know what? We need to have the agent have a fiduciary responsibility to their client. And it doesn't matter that the seller's paying both halves of the commission. The bottom line is if the buyer tells their agent something in strict confidence, it should remain in strict confidence. The whole definition of the word fiduciary is this, from Webster, from Merriam-Webster themselves. I think Merriam's a man, but I could be wrong. Fiduciary, of relating to or involving a confidence or trust, such as held or founded in trust or confidence. I mean, there you go. The thing speaks for itself. I'm glad they gave an example. Fiduciary applies to any situation in which one person justifiably places confidence and trust in someone else and seeks that person's help or advice in some manner. The attorney-client relationship is a fiduciary one. For example, because the client trusts the attorney to act in its best interest of the client at all times. And what happens if the agent breaches the fiduciary duty? What happens if the buyer tells the agent, the buyer's agent, something in strict confidence and they breach it? Well, if it's a fiduciary relationship, that agent can not only lose their license, but if the real estate commission believes it's egregious enough, they'll turn the matter over to the Attorney General's office for criminal prosecution. It's not just any old kind of business relationship. It's a business relationship that says this person is going to put their own self-interest ahead of the buyer. A fiduciary relationship is a very special kind of relationship. The same kind of relationship that an attorney has with their client, it's the same kind of relationship that a real estate agent has with their client. Unfortunately, most investors, particularly new investors, don't have a clue as to what they're doing, and they unintentionally put themselves in a situation that looks like this. I found a listing on Zillow. They put up the name of an agent. I went directly to the agent and said, hey, can you help me buy this property? And the agent said, sure. Do you have an agent you're working with? No, I don't. No problem. I'll work with you. You will be my customer. Customer, that sounds good. Let's do it. According to Maryland, when a buyer chooses not to hire their own buyer's broker agent, they are unrepresented. And what you have established without knowing what the hell you are doing is you have made yourself a customer of this agent, not their client. Their client is the seller, and their fiduciary responsibility and allegiance is to the seller. Their allegiance to you is not a fiduciary one. They're only obligated to treat you fairly, but they have a fiduciary responsibility to the seller. So when you say to that agent, when he asks, well, what are you willing to pay? And you say 130, you know what? I could go 130, but let's just offer 100. Let's just offer to see what they'll take. Okay, well, I'll offer that to them. Yeah, don't tell them that I was willing to pay 130, because like maybe they'll just take 100. But I really love this house. I love this house. I'd be willing to pay, but I want to, let's just see how far we get with 100. I said, no problem, let's write it up for 100. And then that Sunday night, they present the offer to the seller. And if it's not too late, you get a phone call Sunday night. Hey, I got great news. The seller likes your offer, except they want to see if you can go a little higher. Is it possible you can go to that 130 we talked about? Because I think if you can do 130, I can get them to budge. You think they're representing you. You think they're your friend. I really don't want to do 130, but I love that. Yeah, I know you said you love that. I mean, think about you raising the kids in that house. Which would you rather have? A college education, maybe sort of somewhere out in the future, or letting your child grow up in the neighborhood of their dreams? You can always put more money back in that college education account. All right, let's do it. Let's do 130. Let's do it. And you write up the revised offer, they fax it over, email it over, DocuSign it over, you sign it, they sign it, boom, you get to the settlement table. 45 days later, you get the keys. And the seller says to you, oh, I know you're gonna love this house, and I know your son's gonna love this house. And I'm so happy that you were willing to pay $130,000 for the house. You know, the highest offer I had gotten was only about 80,000. But when I heard you were willing to pay 130, I'm like, who told you that? Well, the agent told me that. I told him not to tell you that. Well, he told me that. And you mad? You mad? I'm gonna sue you. And you write out a complaint, the tears and the sweat coming off of you, because you overpaid for that house by $50,000, because the highest offer besides yours was 80. You offered 100, you were already a high bidder. And then the guy called you up, that snake in the grass, and said you needed to go a little higher, and you offered another 30, put it all in. You mad. And you write that letter to the real estate commission. And the real estate commission sends you back a letter after they do a little bit of homework and says, I'm sorry, but you have no case. Like, what do you mean I have no case? You chose not to hire a real estate agent to represent your interest. Therefore, in this transaction, you were unrepresented. You were a customer of the agent who wrote up the offer. On the other hand, the agent had a fiduciary responsibility to the seller. which means by definition at its very root, everything the agent knows, they must tell the seller, including the fact that you had $130,000 to buy this house. And the agent's responsibility is to get the highest price possible for their client. And the client wasn't you, because you chose to be unrepresented. And then you compounded that decision by telling the agent stuff that he was obligated by law to tell the seller, even though you asked him not to. Therefore, we find your claim without merit. Too bad, so sad, but you get nothing. You get nothing, sir. Doing my best, Willy Wonka. Now, does everybody kind of understand now the difference between being a client versus a customer, and what fiduciary means versus just being nice to somebody? And newbie investors make this kind of stupid mistake all the time. Homeowners make this mistake. I went to the open house. I went to the open house alone. The person sitting there was so nice to me, they offered me cookies. They asked me, do you have an agent representing you? I said, no, I just saw the open house sign and I live down the street and I love this neighborhood and I love this house. Okay, no problem. We can go ahead and write the offer up and you're just unrepresented. You're my customer. That sounds nice. Interpret it another way. I don't have a freaking clue what you just said, but if you can help me get this house, that's all I care about. Not realizing that everything I say and falls out of my mouth for the next umpteen minutes or hours, you're going to run straight back to the seller and tell them, because you got a fiduciary responsibility to them, which means by law you got to tell them everything, but you only have a unrepresented customer relationship with me. So now, is everybody kind of understanding that if we're going to go in and hack the matrix, we really want our situation to look like that? The seller's going to have their agent. By definition, the property wouldn't even be in the MLS unless the agent put it there. The MLS belongs to the agents. Sellers can't put properties in the MLS on their own. They either have to be an agent or hire an agent. It wouldn't be in the MLS unless there was already a seller's agent. You, my friend, need to make sure that you got a buyer's agent to protect your interest, to keep your interest confidential. You rush in there and you say to that seller, hey man, I see this house needs some work. I'd like to put it under contract. Do you have an agent representing you? No, I do not. Okay, no problem. I can write up the offer. Tell me what your proof of funds looks like. Well, I don't really have a proof of funds because I'm still getting it together, but I'll probably a letter from my lender. But you know, I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to live in this house anyway. I'm not going to fix it up. I'm just going to buy it and flip it to somebody else. Okay. Well, at the price you want to offer, what do you think it's worth? Well, I've run a couple of comps, did a couple of information. You know, I think it could probably be worth, you know, $20,000 more. It's a little underpriced. Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and write it up. You write it up. So I'll get back to you in 24 hours. They get on the phone with the seller and say, you know what? I had a situation today. An investor came in and he told me some stuff that I was kind of thinking he might be right. And I think the house is underpriced. What do you mean? Well, he was saying some things to me that I kind of heard were happening. So here, let's do this. Why don't we raise the price $25,000? I've got written contract they need to present to you, but before I present it to you, why don't we just go ahead and raise the price? If you like what they're offering, we can go ahead and take their offer here and now, or I can raise the price another, you know, $5,000 above what they're offering and see if we can actually get somebody else to bite. But I do have a written offer right now for $20,000 more. Excuse me, I have an offer for X price, but they're going to wholesale to somebody else for $20,000 more. So I think we ought to raise the price by 20 grand. What do you think? Well, sounds good to me. Go ahead and do it. So they raise the price 20,000 in MLS, and then they come back to you and say, hey, your offer is light by 20 grand. If you're willing to raise the price 20 grand, you can go ahead and have this deal. And you're like, what the hell? What just happened? I'll tell you what just happened. You were unrepresented. And everything you told that agent, they told the seller. They realized after talking to you, they had made a mistake by telling the seller they should put price at one price, and they fixed the mistake. And they totally screwed you over on your ability to wholesale that deal to somebody else. So what should you have done in that situation? Got yourself your own buyer's agent, put the property under contract at the price that you needed, and then turn around and flip your contract to somebody else, and this agent never would have been the wiser. But everything you, the buyer, tell the seller's agent is a beeline straight back to the seller. If you understand what I'm saying here, give me a thumbs up. That, my friend, is how the matrix works. Sellers have their agents, buyers have their agents. Whatever you tell your buyer stops right there. They will not divulge it. You brand new investor, you don't know what you're doing, they're not going to tell them. You ain't got no money, we had to cobble together a proof of funds letter for you, they're not going to tell them. You're going to flip, if you get the property under contract, you're going to flip it to another investor, they're not going to tell them that. And the only way they're going to find out is if you slip up and go out there unrepresented and tell the seller's agent your whole strategy, and the seller's agent goes back and tells straight to the seller. Got it? Okay, so let's go over a couple things and then I'm gonna try to bring this to a close real quick. You don't wanna be out there unrepresented. Next thing you need to know, in Maryland, and this is different than Virginia, different than DC, Maryland says that dual agency, in other words, where an agent represents both the seller and the buyer, dual agency is inherently a conflict of interest and therefore not allowed. Not allowed. Now, there's a little star there, good star here. There's a workaround. How's that work? If the brokerage firm has 3 or more licensed agents, then what the broker has to do is turn the seller over to one of the other agents and let the buyer be represented by the other agent in the firm. But there has to be 3 agents. The broker is neutral. The agent who represents the seller, and the agent who represents the buyer is any agent in the firm. But that can only happen when there's 3 or more agents. If there's only 1 agent or 2 agents, it won't work. Broker stays out of the middle of it, they're neutral, and the seller's agent has to agree not to disclose anything to the broker or to the agent that could be a conflict of fiduciary responsibility, and same is true of the buyer's broker. But if the brokerage firm is less than 3 people, dual agency may not occur. Now, if dual agency doesn't occur, does that mean that you can't do business with that brokerage firm? No. Except there's nobody who has a fiduciary responsibility to you. You are unrepresented. You go find a brokerage firm, it only has 1 broker, you say, hey, I don't have an agent representing me, fine. But everything you tell that broker or everything you tell that agent is going straight back to the seller. You are unrepresented. You are naked. Naked. You're naked. You're naked and too unintelligent to be afraid. That's the worst possible place. You're naked and you should be afraid and you don't even know it. You don't want to be there. Okay, so don't put yourself in that position. Okay, all right, next up, as I already mentioned, let's talk a little bit, again, getting into hacking the MLS. Let's talk a little bit about what agents know and don't know. And I'm going to try to get through this very, very quickly. This will be in your packet, but I'm just going to point out the highlights. I'm not going to give you the whole Maryland law, but in your packet, you will have the Maryland law. Just like in the last packet, I gave you the Constitution. In the next packet, I'm going to give you the Maryland law pertaining to brokerage, okay? And understand this, as I said before, so I don't, at the risk of being redundant, we are a certified school, career school, and we offer the Dearborn education. And Dearborn is like the education that's used throughout the country. What Dearborn does is they have a main book called The Modern Principles of Real Estate that they update every couple of years. And then they do a special supplement just for each state. Okay. Almost every brokerage school in America either uses Dearborn or they have come up with their own curriculum. If they decided, like us, not to come up with their own curriculum, then we're using Dearborn. Okay. So that's just a quick aside, and I already covered that, so I'm gonna skip right over that. So let's talk about the Maryland law as it pertains to brokerage, so that you guys have some understanding as to what real estate agents do, don't do, what they understand, what they don't understand. And some of this I've already covered. I got about 5 slides. I'll go through them as quickly as possible. So first off, the part of real estate agency and real estate brokerage under the Maryland law is COMAR 17101. So COMAR section 17 talks about real estate agency. And the first part is just sort of definitions. So I didn't pull out all the definitions, don't need to go through all definitions, but starting with letter H, so COMAR 17101, letter H, licensed associate real estate broker means, unless the context requires otherwise, an associate real estate broker who is licensed by the commission, so the real estate commission is the one that does the licensing, to provide real estate brokerage services on behalf of a licensed real estate broker with whom the associate real estate broker is affiliated. So again, somebody who has the quote unquote title in Maryland of associate real estate broker is basically an agent who could be a broker, but has chosen not to go off on their own. But they still come under the auspices and the guidance and the management and oversight of the broker. Licensed real estate brokers, subsection I, means unless the context requires otherwise, a real estate broker who's licensed by the commission to provide real estate brokerage services. This means the principal broker, the person in charge. If somebody is qualified to be a broker, but they're not on their own, they're associating with another broker, they are labeled as an associate broker. And then for the most part, most agents are licensed as licensed real estate salespersons. In the law, you will not see a definition of a quote unquote agent. So there's brokers, associate brokers, and licensed real estate salesperson. Means, unless the context requires otherwise, a real estate salesperson who is licensed by the commission to provide real estate brokerage services on behalf of a licensed real estate broker. So again, they're not providing services to the client, they're providing real estate services to the broker. All clients are clients of the broker. And the broker can assign that client to work with a specific salesperson or a specific associate broker, okay? So when you sign up, let's say at Realinvestors, if you sign a broker agreement that says Sherman Ragland, the broker, I can choose with mutual consent and conversation to assign you to somebody else like Jesse or Kevin or Martinez or Stephanie or Steve. And if at any point in time in the brokerage relationship, you want to work with a different agent, a different team leader, you do not have to sign a new buyer-broker agreement because you've already signed it with the broker. Got it? If you sign a buyer-broker agreement with an agent at another firm and you later decide to part company, or that agent parts company with that brokerage, technically your relationship is with the firm and the broker, not the agent. And you cannot just go with that agent to a new firm unless the broker agrees to release you. You are a client of the brokerage, which means the broker, and the broker can decide to allow you or appoint you or have you work with another agent or salesperson, but you are still fiduciary wise and still contractual wise, you're a client of the firm. That's the way it works in Maryland and pretty much every other state, okay? Licensee means a licensed real estate broker, a licensed real estate associate, or a licensed real estate salesperson. So licensee just means you got a license. And you have to have a license, because when we get to COMAR 101, provide real estate brokerage services means to engage in any of the following activities. 1, for consideration, meaning money, but it doesn't have to be money. For consideration, providing any of the following services for another person. Selling, buying, exchanging, leasing any real estate. Collecting rent for any real estate. Assisting another person to locate or obtain for purchase or lease any residential real estate. Kind of sounds like bird dogging, doesn't it? All right. Engaging in regular business of dealing in real estate or lease options on real estate. So in other words, helping people do deals requires a license in the state of Maryland. And your license categories are broker, meaning principal broker, associate broker, or real estate salesperson. Engaging in a business for the primary purpose of which promoting the sale of real estate through a listing and publication, meaning MLS. Engaging in a business that subdivides land or is located in the state or sells subdivided lots. For consideration, serving as a consultant regarding any activity set forth in item 1 through 5. In other words, anything in the above, if you are acting as a consultant, you need a license in the state of Maryland if it's real estate related, okay? So you can't just say, well, I didn't get a commission because I'm not a salesperson because I'm just a consultant. We saw that loophole and we closed it. Real estate means any interest in real property, including condominiums, timeshares, timeshare related. Real estate broker means any individual who provides real estate broker services. Real estate salesperson means any individual well affiliated with acting on behalf of the broker. This title does not apply. Now I'm talking to you guys wholesalers. This title does not apply. A person while acting under a judgment or court order, or so if the court orders this disposition of a property, you decide to sell it yourself, right? Or the court orders you to sell property belonging to your mom, okay? And you're selling it on her behalf. You're not an agent. You don't need a license. A public officer while performing their duties in public office. A person while engaging in a single transaction involves a sale or lease of any real estate under a power of attorney. A licensed auctioneer while selling any real estate at public auction. So I was wrong on that the other day when I said auctioneers need to have a license. I was wrong. They have an auctioneer's license in Maryland. An owner, here you go, talking to you wholesalers, an owner or lessor of any real estate while managing, leasing, or selling real estate unless the primary business of the owner or lessor is providing real estate brokerage service. In other words, if you're wholesaling properties on your own account, you don't need to have a license. But if you're providing a service for somebody else, you need to have a license. So bird dogs in Maryland need a license. Wholesalers acting on their own behalf as a principal in the transaction, according to Comar, do not. So while a real estate broker license is in effect, it authorizes the licensee to provide real estate brokerage services. While an associate real estate broker license is in effect, it authorizes person. So in other words, as long as your license is active, you're good to go. But if your license falls inactive because you didn't do your continuing education or you put it on inactive status, you may not act in the capacity as a real estate licensee, okay? And I'm gonna skip over some of this because, again, I'm gonna give this to you in your packets. I'm just sort of pointing out the highlights, okay? An associate real estate broker, real estate licensed person license does not authorize the licensee to provide real estate brokerage services on the licensee's own behalf or behalf of any other person other than a licensed real estate broker. In other words, if you're an associate broker or you're an agent, you are acting on behalf of your broker. You can't just independently do something that your broker tells you not to do. You can't just independently do something and not have the broker have knowledge of what you're doing. That's going rogue. That'll get you in trouble, not only with your broker, but also with the real estate commission. Real estate brokers should exercise reasonable, adequate supervision. Blah, 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 blah. I'm gonna skip over this because this is really just about supervising. Oh, here we go. And so the responsibility of an office manager, that's what I wanted to highlight. Office manager. Now they call it a branch office manager, but you also oftentimes hear it called a manager, office manager. A branch office manager specifically supervises sales agents and associate brokers registered at that office. So a branch manager or branch office manager really is acting in the role as a broker, principal broker, when they're managing that office, okay? So you may hear agents talk about my manager, my branch manager, or my manager won't let me do a certain thing, or I need to clear it with my manager. That's what they're talking about. By definition, a manager needs to have a license. You're not gonna have an unlicensed person managing people who have licenses. So a branch manager is somebody who has a license, who's been designated to manage that office and supervise the agents in that office. It can be a licensed salesperson, or it can be an associate broker. Typically that happens when the principal broker says, hey, I can't be in two places at once. I'll take care of the agents in this office. You take care of the agents in that office. But that branch manager has to be designated by the principal broker, and everybody has to know who they are. It can't be a secret. All right, brokerage agreement means a written agreement. There's that written agreement thing, that pesky has to be in writing thing between a broker and a client to provide real estate brokerage services. If you don't have a buyer broker or a seller broker agreement with the brokerage firm or with the agent with the brokerage firm, you are not a client. And if you are not a client, you are a customer. And if you're not a client, there is no fiduciary responsibility owed to you whatsoever. If you're just a customer, The agent or the broker or the associate broker just has to be nice to you. But everything you tell them, they will tell the client. The fiduciary responsibility only goes to clients. If you want that protection of a fiduciary responsibility, you must sign a written agreement to establish a broker-client relationship. If you just ask for help and you never sign the agreement, you're not a client, you're a customer. A customer is due the courtesy of being fair. A client is owed the responsibility of a fiduciary responsibility, which means whatever I hear, whatever I know, you know it the second I know it. Does everybody understand that? If you understand that, give me a thumbs up. If you want that fiduciary that fiduciary relationship, if you want that fiduciary protection, if you want your business to stay your business, if you don't want anything you said to wind up in the hands of somebody else, you need to have a written agreement with the broker, the sales agent, the associate broker, before you open your mouth. Got it? Give me a thumbs up if you got it. You can only establish that fiduciary relationship with a written agreement. That's the law. That's not somebody's opinion. That's not somebody being mean to you. It's the law, okay? Broker relationship means a relationship under a brokerage agreement between client and broker has been authorized. Buyer's agent means a licensed real estate broker, licensed real estate associate broker, or licensed real estate salesperson who, in accordance with a written brokerage agreement, represents a prospective buyer or lessee in the acquisition of real estate. If you want that broker, that associate broker, that agent to protect your interests and keep your secrets, there has to be a buyer-broker written agreement before the start of the engagement. Otherwise, you are just a customer. And if a broker has a fiduciary relationship with somebody else and you tell them something, thinking you're telling them it to them in confidence, and you don't have that written agreement, you just told that seller or that buyer or whatever the case might be, stuff that you didn't want them to know. Because you pretty much better guarantee this. Anything you say to an agent, a broker, an associate broker, an office manager, in your capacity as a customer and not a client, they must tell the client. They cannot withhold it. To withhold it is a breach of the fiduciary relationship. What could that possibly be? Oh, I plan to wholesale the property. Got to tell them. Oh, I don't have any money. Got to tell them. Oh, I'm halfway through the 21-day course and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Got to tell them. Got to. If you don't want that information on the hands of the other side, before you open your mouth, sign a buyer-broker agreement and establish a fiduciary client relationship. Become a client. To become a client, you have to affirmatively sign a piece of paper. It's not optional because it's the law. That's what we're reading tonight, the law. So we want to know what the rules of the matrix are before we go in there and hack it. And I'm telling you this now because I see newbie after newbie after newbie after newbie saying stupid stuff on Facebook to real estate agents, telling their whole business to the world, and then wonder how that information they put out there 2-3 weeks ago was the very sword that skewered them. Because you didn't have a fiduciary client-agent relationship because you didn't sign the piece of paper. So anything you put out there on Facebook, they're telling the clients. I didn't know that. They were supposed to, it's on your Facebook page. You tweeted it. You said it at a real estate investor club meeting. You said it at an open house. Well, they weren't supposed to tell them that I was doing this, doing that, and all this stuff. They weren't supposed to know my business. You want your secrets to remain secrets? Engage them as an agent. And one of the first things any good agent is going to tell you, stop posting that stupid stuff on the internet because it's only going to come back and bite you in the butt. And when it does, it's going to bite you hard. If you got what I'm saying, give me a thumbs up, please. All right. Are you guys happy you came today? Again, I want to go hack the matrix. I don't want to be chewed up by the matrix. Before we go in, you need to know what the rules are. So them agents don't come and squash you like a bug. Got to stay away from the squiddies. All right. Finally, on this page. Client means a person who has entered into a brokerage agreement with a broker under a brokerage relationship. It doesn't say it here, but it says it every place else. Written agreement. There's no mystery as to whether or not you're a client. If you haven't signed a piece of paper, you're not a client. And if you are a client, you've signed a piece of paper. That it is the written buyer broker agreement that establishes that client agent fiduciary relationship. That's at the end of the day is the point I'm trying to make. And I want you guys to know why that's important. And I also want you to know why it is. It's not because it's a whim of the broker or a whim of the agent. It's what the law says. And once you become a client, that agent, that broker, that brokerage firm must keep your state secrets secret, okay, for life. Not just while you're under, like once you become a client, they can't tell your business after you leave. That's also one of the rules in the law. All right, dual agency. Dual agent means a relationship in which a licensed real estate broker or branch office manager acts as dual agent. Dual agent means a licensed real estate broker who acts as a branch office manager described as subtitle has been designated by the licensed real estate broker, acts as both an agent for both the seller and the buyer, the lessor. Now again, dual agency can only occur when there's 3 or more agents working at the firm, because the state of Maryland says one person, a solo broker acting as a dual agent, is not allowed. It's inherently a conflict of interest. They want to see 2 separate people managed by somebody above who keep each individual secret. And even if they're working in the same office, it's still got to be kept a secret, okay? Duty of buyer's agents to assist in the evaluation of a property, including the provision of market analysis of the property and preparation of an offer on a property and to negotiate. By the way, if it was up to me, this is the law, but what I'm telling you, and I'm going to keep on telling you, the #1 reason to hire a buyer's agent is their ability to negotiate on your behalf. Because for most of us, especially just getting started, that's really the one skill you don't possess. Because we're hacking the matrix, I'm going to teach you how to do market analysis. I'm going to teach you how to write an offer. I'm going to teach you how to do market analysis and write an offer even before you go engage an agent. You're going to know that before you even talk to an agent. You don't need an agent to write your offers. You don't need an agent to do your market analysis. Now, maybe they can help you do a better job at it. But what you really, really, really need is to have that team member negotiate, because they're the ones who are going to be talking to the seller's agent. Once you engage an agent, you can't talk to the seller's agent. You can talk to the seller. You can always talk to the seller if you can find them. But once you engage an agent, it's agent to agent conversation. It's agent to agent combat. If you're not real comfortable right now in your negotiating skills, you should love that idea that I don't have to talk to anybody other than my agent, and my agent's going to go in there and go to battle for me. That's what you want. And you want to create a condition where they're going to bat and fighting for you every day of the week to help you get deals. But in order for that to happen, we got to put in a certain number of offers out on the street, so that when we have a certain number of offers on the street, playing the odds, playing the percentages, we put ourselves in a position to quote unquote create a highest and best situation so that the agent can go do their #1 job, which is negotiate on our behalf. But we don't need agents to write offers. We don't need agents to do market analysis. We don't need agents to meet with contractors. That's our job. We're the investor. It's our business. And if you're out there looking for an agent to do that stuff for you, don't be surprised when the agent goes, you want me to do what and do what and do what? And then you're going to walk out the door with a $5,000 check, and I'm going to walk out the door with a $2,000 check. In what universe does that make sense? But if you look an agent in the eye and say, hey, listen, I understand that you were pretty good with investors. I understand you're an investor yourself. I understand you're a pretty good negotiator. What if I do 90% of the work and you tackle that 10% I can't do? And hint, hint, you don't have to tell them this. And after you've mastered that 90% because you've done it once or twice, you're going to turn around and hire a virtual assistant, and they're going to do all of that work. And you still going to get your check. But the agent's the one who's doing the single most important thing in this whole plan, like the #1 thing you need that team member to do is the one thing you're probably not very good at, not capable of. And in the world of the matrix, you can't do it anyway. You, the buyer, can't negotiate with the seller's agent. If you attempt to negotiate on your own with the seller's agent, they don't have a fiduciary responsibility with you. They have it with their client, the seller. Well, what if you slip up and say something you didn't mean to say in the middle of negotiations? They're going to go right back and tell it to their client, and you're screwed. Guys, just trust me on this. If we're going to get into the matrix and out of the matrix safely and make some money, there's certain things you just need to stay away from. You need to stay away from their agent. You want your agent to talk to their agent. Oh my God, I just had a deja vu movie moment. Stay away from the agents. They'll kill you. And you do. Get your agent to negotiate with their agent, knowing full well what they should say, what they shouldn't say. But what you really want are top negotiators for your agents. And then you tackle all the stuff that most traditional agents normally do, and they're going to love you. Oh, you're going to send out the offers. Oh, you're going to do the follow-up phone calls or follow-up emails to make sure the offers were received. Oh, you're going to do your own market analysis. All you really want me to do is negotiate on your behalf when you get the highest and best, which means you're going to get 5 offers out the door every day, so I can actually have a chance to negotiate on your behalf every week, because that's about the ratio. If you can get 25 to 30 offers out the door, you'll have one chance that week of having somebody negotiate for you. That's a beautiful thing. And then after you get that done for a couple weeks, and I show you how to go hire a virtual assistant and put that part of the business on autopilot, that stuff's happening like, and you're sleeping, you're working, you're on vacation, you're doing everything but getting your hands dirty. Now you got to get your hands dirty up front. I gotta teach it to you well enough so you can go teach it to, or at least, you know, when I'm going to introduce some virtual assistants who know what they're doing, so you don't have to teach them, but you do kind of need to tell them how you want it done specifically. So you need to know it well enough to say, okay, I'd like to have it done this way, not that way. But here's the bottom line. You're not going into the matrix alone. And you need somebody who's in there who knows how to deal with the seller's agent, to defend, to fight, and to get what's yours. But you're not going to go in there and grab it yourself. It'll kill you. You'll say something you're not supposed to say. You'll do something you're not supposed to do. They'll tell the seller, and your deal will blow up in your face. We need our buyer's agent to get in there and fight for us to get what we need. And we need to make it possible for them to do it. That's how we hack the matrix. Okay? 1 or 2 more slides and we're done. Duty of a buyer's agent. That looks like a dupe. All right. Oh, licensee. Hey, here we go. Comar 17532. This is important. Licensee shall act in accordance with terms of brokerage agreement, promote the interests of the client. That's that fiduciary responsibility again. Seeking a sale or lease of the property specified, seeking sale, lease of property specified in brokerage agreement, unless otherwise specified in brokerage agreement. Here we go. Number 3, unless otherwise specified in the brokerage agreement, presenting in a timely manner. What does it say? What's it say, people? What does that say? All written offers. I'm sorry. Why did I put that lowercase? Because I just copied it straight off the website. All. What does all mean? It means exactly what it says. All written offers or counter offers to and from the client, even if the real estate is subject to an existing contract. In other words, even if the real estate's under contract, they still got to present your offer. Don't let some weak-kneed buyer's broker agent represent you and come back sniffling, crying, oh, they said they weren't going to take any more lowball offers. Tell me where it says in the law. Where do you see on a piece of paper the words lowball? It don't say nothing about all offers must be presented unless they're lowball offers, and then lowball offers can go in the trash can. It doesn't say that. This is the Maryland law. I got news for you. If I pulled up Virginia, it'd say the same thing. If I pulled up DC, it'd say all 50 states say the same thing. All written offers when it comes to real estate must be presented in a timely fashion, no less. Can't sit on it. Got to be presented. And in Maryland, it goes on to say, even if the property's under contract. Now, there are some states that say, hey, if the property's under contract, they don't have to present any more offers, and that's cool. But don't let anybody say to you, I can't present your offer because the price is too low. Because that ain't in the law. Do you guys understand how powerful it is when you know what the law is before you go into battle? Boom, mind blown. Yeah, aha moment here. We know the law. We know what the do's and don'ts are. So when the real estate agents that barely got out of the 60 hours worth of education start coming back at us and saying, well, you know, your offer's too low, you're gonna make it hard before I present it. Tell them Comar 17532, section 3, cut it, paste it. Timely manner is subject to interpretation. It only bites you in the butt when it bites you in the butt. Meaning, I presented your offer in 3 days. What was 3 days timely? Well, the client was on vacation. The client was out of town. I knew they were out of town. It was timely. Okay, you get the pass. I presented your offer in 3 days. You were right in the middle of best and finals where you told everybody they had 24 hours to respond, and you didn't present my offer for 3 days, even though you told everybody they had 24 hours to respond, and my offer was the highest offer, my offer was the cleanest offer. Now, that won't happen you as the buyer. That'll happen when the seller finds out. You mean there was another offer on the table that you didn't present to me? Well, it was kind of low. Yeah, it may have been kind of low, but it had no conditions. All I want to do is buy the property at that number. You suggested I take this other offer that had this condition and this condition and this condition. By the time they got through with me, it was 5 months before I sold my property, and I sold it for a lot less than the guy who said, I'll buy your property for this price with no conditions. You screwed me, agent, and you're going to the real estate commission and you're going to lose your license. And guess what? They are. Timely is subject to interpretation. If you tell everybody you got 24 hours and you don't present it for 3 days, you're in trouble. If you say timely manner and it's 3 days and your client's on vacation for 5 days and it's the first thing they see, you're good to go. It's subject to circumstances, okay? All right, so you guys feeling pretty good after having this little review and having a better understanding as to how real estate brokerage works? Was this good for you? If it was, give me a thumbs up. Give me a thumbs up. All right, so I got some special instructions for you. Tomorrow, we are not going to meet live. I want you guys to go through a case study called The Water Boy. And it's on CDs that I give in the old version, or I gave in the old version, 2 CDs. I can't find the original recording. If I could find the original recording, I'd give it to you. What happened was about 20 years ago, maybe 18 years ago, I was asked to speak at a real estate investor training, and I was asked to speak on the topic of wholesaling. And this concept was very new at the time because I was the first one to do it, of using LLCs as a conduit to allow you to wholesale properties that were in the MLS. You don't need to use LLCs if you're dealing with non-MLS properties, because non-MLS properties, all contracts are assignable. The problem and the challenge with assigning MLS contracts is that MLS contracts say you can't assign it without written permission of the seller, of the mutual parties. And I'll explain to you the day after tomorrow why that's problematic. So I came up with this concept, which is I generally adopted from the world of commercial real estate 20 years ago, of creating LLCs when you are specifically making offers on board of realtor contracts, because your LLC is not you. And therefore, because your LLC is not you, technically, you're not assigning the contract, you're selling your interest in the LLC. Well, if you're selling your interest in the LLC and not assigning the contract, then you never have to go back to the seller and get permission to assign a contract, because you didn't assign the contract. You just sold your interest in the LLC. And I'll talk more about this the day after tomorrow. Anyway, I was asked to come to this event and present at this meeting. The guy's name was Rob Bostic, and he had a company called Aspire America, and he was teaching people how to become real estate investors, I think up in Baltimore. And I was asked to come in and help present this topic of how to use LLCs as a tool. And that explanation was about 1 hour and 40 minutes, and it was recorded on videotape, but I can't find the videotape right now. Maybe one day, I mean, you know, we moved the office, we shut down the office during the pandemic, and there's stuff still in boxes sitting where maybe one day I'll find that videotape. It was a tape, not a chip, not an SD drive. But I do have the audio of it, But because the audio was put on CDs, it's on 2 tracks. Excuse me, 2 tracks per, so 4 tracks. So each track is about 20, 25 minutes. And what I want you guys to do is listen to all 4 tracks tomorrow. If you've already got programmed on your schedule to come to class at 7 o'clock, then just listen to it at 7 o'clock. If on the other hand, you want to listen to it earlier in the day, then listen to it early in the day and use that 7 o'clock slot for something else. But your assignment for tomorrow is to listen to the Water Boy and listen to all 4 tracks and listen to me explain how to use LLCs as a tool to basically wholesale properties that the contract says you can't. I mean, I'll sign a contract that says you can't be, that says it can't be assigned. And truthfully, I had a mentor many, many years ago, a guy named Bill Glazer, who gave me some of the best piece of advice he ever gave me. He said, if you are in the business of coaching, teaching, mentoring, or letting people look over your shoulder, make sure every time you're coaching, teaching, mentoring, or describing something that you record it. Because you never know if that's going to be like the best example you ever gave, and you may want to just share the recording as opposed to repeating it over and over again. Well, I got to tell you, I listened to the Water Boy for the first time in almost 20 years, and I'm like, I can't do a better job of explaining this than I did on that day. So rather than me come in here, sitting with you guys and explaining for an hour and a half what I've already got on a tape, I'm gonna let you listen to the recordings. You can call it lazy if you want, but I'm afraid that if I try to explain it again, it wouldn't be as good as I did on that day for Rob Bostick's Aspire America course. So even though it's 20 years old, it's still the best explanation and the best definition of how to set up LLCs as a tool to make offers in the MLS, so that as you're using Board of Realtor contracts, you can assign contracts that don't allow you to freely assign them by basically selling off your interest. And that's what your lesson is for tomorrow. So I will send you out an email. You may get it tonight, you may get it tomorrow. It will have your week 2 packets in it. It will have the link to the Water Boy, although I'll probably also post them inside the Facebook group. It'll have a transcript of the Water Boy that will also have a place for you to take notes. So if there's parts of it that's hard for me to hear, you can kind of follow along with the transcript. Sometimes people like to hear it, sometimes people like to see it, sometimes people like to do both, and you're free to do that. And that's your assignment for tomorrow, as well as your homework for today. But I'm also going to include in the packet that you're going to get a 1-page copy. Is it one? It might be 2, but it's not more than 2. There's a 1 or 2 page copy of the standard buyer broker agreement that you are going to need to sign and want to sign to establish that buyer broker relationship with whatever agent that you want to use is going to go into the matrix and represent you. Don't sign it. I'm not asking you to sign it. But I do want you to read it so we can talk about it when we come back together for our live class the day after tomorrow. So tomorrow I won't be here. There will not be a Zoom session. I will send out an email just to remind you close to 7 o'clock, but you can go to the Facebook group and listen to the Water Boy case. It'll say day 10 Water Boy, or you can just follow the instructions that I'm going to give you in the email I'm going to send you. Looking at the hour, probably going to be tomorrow. So tonight's homework, if there is homework for tonight, if you haven't downloaded the MLS app on your mobile device, and I stress, I want it on your mobile device. I know there's an option to download it on your home computer, but your home computer is not going to do you any good when you're out in the field looking at properties. You're like, gee, I wonder what properties rent for. Well, I guess when I get home, why wait till you get home? Why not just pull it up on your mobile device? So if you're used to carrying around your mobile phone or iPhone or Droid, download it there. If you're like me, you carry around an iPhone and an iPad, put it on the iPad, better yet, put it on both. Sometimes I lock my iPad up in the glove box in the car when I'm in a dicey neighborhood, but I still have my phone on me all the time. So download it on your mobile devices, play with it, right? We're going to get to start using it in a day or so. So that's kind of your homework for tonight. You're going to get the packet. When you get the packet, pull up the Board of Realtor buyer broker agreement. It's only like 2 pages or 1.5 pages or something like that. Read it, right? Be prepared to discuss it. And then tomorrow, your assignment will be to listen to the water boy. And you can listen to the water boy on your own, take notes, or you can listen to the water boy in a group, or you can listen to the water boy and print out the transcript and follow along with the transcript. Okay? So does everybody got that? Everybody got that? All right. Questions. So let me see. Shiva had a question way early on. I need to go back and find it. Shiva says, at Real Investors, do we have to pay agents additional money to negotiate on our behalf? No, Shiva, you do not have to pay agents additional money to negotiate. When you enter into a buyer-broker agreement, and what I recommend is you enter into a buyer-broker agreement with me, the broker, and then if you have an agent you want to work with who's at Real Investors, we will go ahead and facilitate that relationship. If you ever decide you want to work with a different agent for whatever reason, because you signed the buyer-broker agreement with me, the broker, you don't have to sign another buyer-broker agreement. But if you sign a buyer-broker agreement with an agent at Real Investors, which you can do, if you ever want to work with somebody other than them, then you will have to sign another buyer-broker agreement. Or if they decide to leave. And there's lots of reasons why folks leave. I mean, we're pretty blessed because most of our team leaders have been agents at Real Investors for years. But, you know, Jonathan Runlett was a team leader at Real Investors before he decided to go off and buy all their exit franchises in Maryland. And I got news for you. If you can afford to buy all the exit franchises and own all the exit franchises and have all these other agents running around doing work, and all you're doing is just sort of doing your investing on the side. Now, I'm not saying that's what he's doing, but if that door opens up to you, take it. You'd be crazy not to. So here's the deal. I'm gonna send you the buyer broker agreement in the packet, print it out, look at it, highlight it, do whatever, be prepared to discuss it. And if you decide day after tomorrow that you want to engage Real Investors as your buyer broker, as your brokerage firm, sign it with my name on it. I'll co-sign it, and then we'll talk about which agent you're going to work with. Now, some of the agents in Real Investors do charge that $500 fee. I think it's $495 or something like that up front. And that gets credited back on your deal, your first deal. So we like every other brokerage firm, impose a $500 fee. It's like $495 or $497 or something like that, which is a transaction fee. And the law allows for our agents to charge that up front. And some of the agents do. Not all of them do, but some of them do. I kind of look at it this way. If an agent knows something you don't know, if they can help you get someplace that you can't get, and they decide to charge you a $500 look over my shoulder fee to show you something that you're going to go off and use and make a lot of money off of over and over again, why not? Because as we finish out next week and I start talking about how you take your six-figure business and make it a 2x 6 figures, I'm going to teach you how to create a look over my shoulder program and charge other people $500. And you're going to love it when I introduce it, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. That's lesson for week 3, not lesson for week 2. Okay. So, but no, you're not going to be charged any money for somebody to negotiate for you. Do I suggest, Mark, do you suggest having your offers saved as backup? I strongly suggest that you save your offers, but not necessarily for quote unquote backup purposes. I recommend that you get yourself like a 4-inch binder and you go to the trouble of every offer that you actually put out in the streets, printing it out and saving it in a binder, so that once a week, like on a Sunday night, as you're prepping for the next, you can go back and look at the offers that you already submitted. Because again, 90% of the offers you submit, 97% of the offers you submit, 97% of offers that you submit, you're not going to hear anything, not a peep. Only about 3% will you have people go, okay, I like everything about your contract, but I don't like your price. Your price is ridiculous. Can you raise the price? Some people are so offended by the price, they don't even bother to respond. But guess what? We're not going to go out and look at 25 properties so we can write an offer on one. We're going to submit 25 offers, so the one that we actually have a chance at getting will come back and say, can you raise the price? The answer is always, yeah, let me go take a look at it. Give me 24 hours. I'll give you my answer, or 30, or 48 hours or 72 hours. And again, that's subject to the negotiation between your agent, the buyer's agent, and the seller's agent. But we're going to put offers out there before we go see properties so that when they come back and say, hey, can you come up a little higher? Then we buy ourselves a day or two to go out there with a contractor and go through with a fine-tooth comb. Okay? That's the strategy. That's what I mean by hacking the matrix. Otherwise, you're out there looking at 25 properties and make an offer on one, which you still may not get. I mean, ultimately, you're still going to get to the same place in this market. Whatever you offer, somebody's going to ask you to offer a higher price. So why not just go ahead and make the offer sight unseen and wait for them to ask for a higher price and then go look at a property like you're actually going to buy it and submit the offer that, based on the Mayo formula I'm going to give you the day after tomorrow, makes sense. No, Sherman, I'd rather go look at 25 properties in a week to decide which one I'm going to make an offer on so I get right back to the same place of having to negotiate. Okay, do it your way. But I tell you one thing, if you're forcing your agent to do all that work for you, show you those 25 properties, because you can't go on those properties by yourself, by the way. Did you guys know that? Probably didn't know that. You can't go into a property that's in the MLS by yourself. You're trespassing. And if somebody shoots you, it's your fault. If the roof falls down on you, it's your fault. If you slip and fall off the front porch like I did on a property 18 years ago when I didn't know any better and almost break your back, it's your fault. Because if you don't hold a real estate license, you have no business in that property. Only people who have the real estate license and the center keys have a right to be in a property. So in order for you to get in a property, your agent has to go with you and show it to you. You think an agent's going to walk around showing you 5 properties a day so you can write an offer on one, so you can play at being an investor? You think that's going to work? I'm talking about hacking the matrix, not being a slave of the matrix. And hopefully you guys are starting to see the difference. If you're starting to see the difference, give me a thumbs up. By the way, my camera's reversed, so I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. So hacking the matrix means we put written offers out the door, knowing full well that 97% of them are going to go in the trash can. And it's the 3% that come back and say, hey, can you give us the highest and best? And the answer is always the same. Give me a couple of days, get out there with my contractor, go through it again, or go through it. You don't have to even say the word again, because that's not true. You didn't go through the property the first time, right? Let me go through the property with my contractor. I'll get back to you with a higher price. Well, now you're out there seriously looking to buy that property. You're going to take your best shot at it. Well, wouldn't you rather be out there looking at one property a week rather than 25 properties a week? Who got time? You ain't got time for that. Are you guys is anybody getting what I'm saying here about hacking the matrix and not being a slave to the matrix? So back to Mark's question. I recommend that every property that you actually submit an offer on, you keep in some kind of a log or a book or a binder, and you should keep it. Even when you get to the point that you put this thing on autopilot and your assistant is sending those offers out, because all this stuff is done electronically today. Nobody's using fax machines today, right? So even after you get to the point that they're going out, and by the way, if it's all being done electronically, what difference does it make if the offers are being written up in your bedroom or your kitchen or your dining room, or they're being written up by some virtual assistant in the Philippines that's charging you $5-10 an hour? And they're doing 90% of the work and you're keeping 90% of the profits. By the way, I kind of like the idea of using Filipino virtual assistants. You can use virtual assistants from anywhere. You can use virtual assistants here. But in the Philippines, they're 13 hours different. When you're going to bed, they're getting up. When you're getting up, they're going to bed. That means they're like little elves in Santa's workshop. They've worked all night long to get your business where it needs to be for you to make money, and you were sleeping while it was happening. Anybody like that idea? Let me hear you say, yes, I like that idea, okay? So plus, Filipino virtual assistants are highly educated, like multiple master's degrees, are working for $5-10 an hour, and Filipino virtual assistants, most of them speak perfect English. Not true in other parts of the world where you can find relatively inexpensive white-collar labor. You can do this in the United States, but y'all know minimum wage is $15 an hour now. Why should I pay 3 times something and train somebody to do something when I can pay 1/3 as much and they already know what they're doing? They got master's degrees, speak perfect English, so I can perfectly understand them. They can perfectly understand me. And oh, by the way, many of them in a particular virtual assistant group that we use, they're 100% trained in real estate. They probably know more about the contract process and what's in the contract and how to write up a contract than you do. But you should still go through the process. I'm going to teach you this week on how to write a contract so you know what the heck they're doing, okay? Now, back to Mark's question. Even if I got a virtual assistant doing it, I still want to print out what went out, and I keep it in a logbook. Why? Because I like to sit there Sunday night when I'm getting kind of going through my schedule, going through my daily task sheets that I've organized. And I want to go through and see, okay, what's the status of some of these offers I made a month ago? And I'll look at the contract that I wrote, even if I didn't hear anything, and I'll pull it up with my own MLS access, and I'll see, is that property still available? And I have a little offer worksheet that I'm going to share with you guys that says, okay, here's what it was listed for 30 days ago when I made my offer. Oh, look, they've lowered the price. Maybe after they got the snot beat out of them for 30 days, maybe it's time to drop another offer on them. And maybe I'll go higher, maybe I'll go lower. It just depends on what the marketplace is doing. When you're in a hyperactive, hyper market, properties are 7 days on the market, you can't play that game. But the market's like a pendulum. If it's hyperinflated today, sooner or later that pendulum's going to swing back and it's going to be slow as dirt. And there's different kinds of games you play depending upon where the market is. Now, is that the subject of this course? No, this course is about getting your first deal done in 21 days or less. But when I get into markets that are slower or faster or whatever, and I spend a little more time in this business, and I spend a little bit more time with my mentor, and I spend a little bit more time with my coaches and other more experienced investors, I can learn how to play those little insider games. I like keeping a logbook of the offers I made so I can go back and look and see what has happened in the intervening period. Now, if the property got sold, that comes out of the logbook and goes in the trash. But if the property didn't get sold, I'm like, oh, look where we were 30 days ago. Where do we think we are today? And then react accordingly, which might mean writing up a new offer. I'm not going to talk about it today because I'm already starting to go into overtime, but I am going to talk to you guys a little bit about the insider secrets on bank REOs. And if I don't tell you about it in a day or two, we're not going to talk about it tomorrow because you're not going to see me tomorrow. But if I don't talk about it in a day or two, please somebody remind me to talk about bank REO. There's a whole bidding strategy that goes down with bank REOs. I have been in the position of selling off bank-owned properties. When I was a government contractor, one of the things that I did was sold off close to $10 billion of defaulted bank-owned real estate. I was what was called a SAMDA 2.0 contractor from 1993 to 1997 when the RTC was established to liquidate all the bankrupt properties and bankrupt savings and loans. And we had the distinction of taking down Standard Federal, Second National, Perpetual, on and on and on and on, roughly about 7 institutions in the Mid-Atlantic region. I know what it means to sell bank-owned REO. And I know the games that bankers play because I've been an insider. And it's not what you think it is if you're an outsider. They actually come out at what's called a BPO. You're like, what is he talking about? I need to shut up now because I'm teaching the lesson for 2 days from now today, and we got enough to deal with today. So just come back and remind me, talk to you about bank REOs. All right, so see, it says when we download and register the app, it asks if we're just browsing or you're an agent. Should we answer? If you are getting that, you went to the wrong place. If you are going to my website with my picture, it knows that I'm the agent and you're the client. That's where you should be going. So please, please, please go back to day 8 where it has the picture. Go back to the part on the mobile ML, go back to the Facebook group, right? Or you can type in now Real Investors Mobile MLS or go back and you will see an app, and that app will have this picture in it. And if you don't see this picture, you're in the wrong place. Real Investors Mobile MLS. And it will know that you are a client and that you're establishing the relationship through my brokerage relationship. And that's why you have access to it. Do investors work with more than one brokerage firm, or is it more common to work with? Aya, if you're okay with shoveling out money out the door like it's candy, then go ahead and sign up with multiple brokerage firms. And I'll talk about this in greater detail in 2 days, but fundamentally it works like this. You sign a brokerage agreement with one firm, you sign a brokerage agreement with another firm. If you wind up doing a deal with one, the other one's going to come looking for their commission. If you do a deal with one, the other one, and then you have to pay the commission dollars twice. And because the information's already in MLS, they know that you bought it. So wait a minute, I did it through my LLC. Yeah, well, your LLC was the same one that signed the buyer broker agreement, and I know what your LLC is. So I know you bought it. And because I have agent comments, I also know what the commission was. And I know what that buyer broker earned. And I also know that you had a buyer broker agreement with me. And since I was working with you, helping you, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll talk more about that in a couple of days about the do's and don'ts for engaging brokerage, but you never, ever, ever want to have two brokerage firms that you have engagements with at the same time, unless for some reason, one is operating in one geography and one is working in another. So let's assume for a second, you wind up working with a brokerage firm that only is licensed in DC, and you decide to hire a different brokerage firm for stuff you're going to do in Maryland. Then it makes sense, but only with it being disclosed to both brokerage firms, so you don't wind up getting billed twice. And you will have to pay that bill twice if somebody decides to take you to court. If the commission check is big enough and somebody decides to take you to court, you're going to wind up having to pay the commission check twice, and you don't want to do that. But again, we'll get more into that in a couple of days. All right, so that looks like most of the questions. Let's go ahead and let's watch our case study for tonight. You guys pretty clear on what you should be doing tomorrow? Wait to get the email from me or check in on the Facebook page tomorrow around your regular time, and there'll be instructions for how to listen to the Waterboy case. That's your assignment for tomorrow. It's 4 separate audio files. Each audio file is about 20 to 25 minutes. So it's roughly about an hour and 20 to an hour and 30 minutes. So you guys are getting off easy tomorrow because you will not see me, okay? But I will be responding to the Facebook group. So if you post in the Facebook group, you'll still get comments from me. All right, here's our case study for tonight. Bob Allwine from Frederick, Maryland, talking about how he made $31,500 in 90 days using a little bit of coaching from me in the 21-day system.
Came out and met the property manager, took a look at the house. It's 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. As I mentioned, on 1.47 acres. The house was in ill repair, to say the least. The grass was literally this tall. There was a pool in the backyard. You couldn't see the offices out back. The interior of the home had debris and belongings stacked almost to the ceiling in many cases. So the house was in really bad shape. The guy was living down in Florida. The house was vacant for 5 years, and he was pretty much in a hurry to just be done with the house. So we were able to come in and work out a deal where we agreed to haul everything out of the house, which ultimately ended up being the other investor that I wholesaled the house to. But that's a little bit about the deal.
Okay, so you just said wholesale. Now, I know what wholesaling is,
Yes.
but some people watching this may not,
Okay.
or they've heard the term, not quite sure. Could you briefly describe exactly what you did to get this deal done?
Sure. So looking at the house, when you go to wholesale a house, wholesaling is basically putting a property under contract and then assigning the contract to another investor or to an end buyer who will rehab the house. So you're buying the house only for a short period of time and you're only buying it on paper. So in that instance, you have to approach the house as if you were the rehabber and you were going to rehab the house. Sherman talks about having 3 exit strategies. Either A, you're going to wholesale, B, you're going to rehab it yourself, or C, you'll put a tenant in the house. So it's important when you go to look at a house, you have a strategy in mind. In this case, I pretty much knew it was a great wholesale opportunity because of the numbers and the Mayo formula that I used to figure out what the house was worth and what I might be able to sell it for.
Okay, and how long did the deal take you to put together?
It took me about 2-3 weeks worth of my marketing campaign to find the deal.
Mm-hmm.
It took 4 phone calls to the owner who was out of state. It took 2 visits to the house, and all total about 3 days to get a signed contract.
Wow, and would you mind telling us how much you made on the deal?
I wouldn't mind at all. Actually, so when I talked to the owner, and this will happen the first time you get somebody who actually says yes, and I've bought other properties. I have 4 rental properties now. I started about 10 years ago with that, but just got into wholesaling within the last year. Just really figured out what I wanted to do, which is rehab and wholesale. But anyway, when you get to your first wholesale deal and you have somebody, a buyer on the other end of the phone, and you make them an offer and they say yes. And I'm glad the guy was on the phone, because if he would have seen me sweating, I was thinking, what am I going to say next? What do I do next? Hurry up and get the contract. So long story short, we offered $75,000 for the property, which they accepted. The house appraised for $285,000.
Wow.
We sold it to the rehabber for $100,000.
Oh my goodness. So that's what, $25,000 in your pocket?
$25,000. I actually split that with my partner, a
Okay.
mentor, who helped me put together my first couple of deals.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Sure.
Wow, nice pocket change there for what, a couple of weeks marketing, a little bit of negotiating.
Altogether, within 30 days, closed 2 deals and wholesaled both of those deals for just over $30,000. This
Wow.
one being 25 and the other one 6,000.
Okay, that is very, very, very good. Congratulations. So no wonder you feel confident to go out there and do more deals. Why should people watching this get into wholesaling and do use Sherman's course?
Well, Sherman's course is great because there's a couple of reasons it's great. I mean, what it did for me, and I do have some investment experience, but probably 2 years ago, I decided that I wanted to rehab, and I had heard about wholesaling, but I really didn't know too much about it. So going to the investor group meetings that I do participate in, started to hear more and more about wholesaling. I met Sherman back in March at our Hub City RIA meeting, where he gave a presentation, and you could just tell he was genuine and he knew what he was talking about. And wholesaling being something that I was interested in as kind of a stepping stone to rehabbing, I figured, what the heck, I'm gonna give it a shot, and I'm gonna figure out how to do this. So Sherman's program, you know, and the first time you meet him or the first time you hear him talk, he'll probably ask you to write something down. And at the top of the page, when he first starts talking, and he says, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. So that's something that I started to write down from that day forward, and still write down every day. It's something that Sherman brings through the program, though. He brings a lot of knowledge and background and expertise. He really gets you going and gets you to take action. So you can buy the program, you can go through the program, you can listen to the mentor, or you can have the mentoring calls with Sherman, which are extremely helpful. You can listen to the CDs where he interviews other people like Robin Thompson and a few of the other well-known experts like Carlton Sheets, which are extremely entertaining, full of knowledge, full of information. I still listen to them today. But the main thing that Sherman's program is going to do is it's going to get you to start and make progress. And if you get halfway through the program, which I'll admit that I did, I got halfway through the program and didn't do everything in the first 9 days that I was supposed to do, you have to stop and go back and do it again.
Right.
Because there are pieces of the puzzle that you have to put together, and you have to start to take action. And that's really what counts. And that's what really helped me get to here.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, do you think anybody could do this?
Sure, anybody that has an interest and a desire and has a passion for this sort of thing. I think that, you know, it's not rocket science, it's math. It's knowledge that you acquire. It's learning how to go out and assess the properties, how to start to think like a rehabber, how to look at the deals and crunch the numbers. And one big piece that I left out that Sherman is adamant about is going out and finding yourself a mentor. The easiest way to be successful at something is to find someone else who's done what you want to do.
Right.
And that's what you have to do. So Sherman's program starts out talking about 10 different ways you can make money in real estate. Having some experience, I already knew some of those ways. The biggest thing that I took from it was putting a plan in place and following the steps. So if you pay attention and you pick some things that work for you, in phase 1, you get very active. And in phase 2, you kind of ratchet it up a notch. You know, 80% of all houses are sold on the MLS, which is what phase 1 is. So you really need to get out there and make a lot of offers. Even though I had some experience, I didn't make the kind of offers that I needed to make to have the activity, the continuous activity to be successful here. And you really do need to get out and make 20, 30, 40, 50 offers. And once you get into 20 to 30 offers, the phone's going to start to ring back, or they're going to call your realtor, and the other realtor is going to say the bank would like to counter offer. So you start to get some excitement, some momentum, and then eventually maybe about the 30th or the 20th or the 25th. Maybe you get lucky and do it earlier, but I found that after about 30 deals or 30 offers, you're gonna have a contract in hand.
Okay, great. And any last words you'd like to say to encourage our people to get on board with wholesaling, particularly with Sherman? Any words of encouragement?
Well, if you get the program, don't rush through it. Don't jump ahead of yourself. Go ahead and take your time and listen to everything. You're going to want to go from day 1 to day 21 in a hurry. And chances are you're going to get to day 21, you're going to scratch your head and say, all right, now what was I supposed to do? So you're going to have to go back and listen to some things again. So take your time and do the activities. Get active, get out there and make some offers, and eventually you'll have a deal. Hi, my name's Bob Allwine. I'm a real investor. I just made $25,000 and I get big checks.
So the good news is I don't give you 21 days worth of CDs and notes anymore, so you can't jump ahead. But I wanted to just share that with you. That's several years old. I think that particular, I was asked to go up to Hub City RIA. Anybody know where Hub City RIA is? Oh my gosh. I thought they were in Frederick, and they were almost out to Harper's Ferry. They were like the Cumberland Gap. And I arrived a good 45 minutes after I was supposed to be presenting. So I gave this very abbreviated talk on wholesaling. That's gotta be 15 years ago. And after I finished, Bob came up to me and said he was an experienced investor, and asked if I would give him some coaching. And I said, like, dude, I had no idea this was this far. If I knew it was this far from Bowie, I wouldn't have accepted the invitation. So I'm not coming back out to Cumberland Gap. And he says, that's okay, and I'm not coming to Bowie. So we actually did all of our coaching mentoring over the telephone. So he was sort of truly my first long distance. But I sent him the 21-day course. We walked through it, and it's exactly like he said. You know, he took a little bit longer, but I think he did get his first deal done in about 3 weeks. Granted, he was an experienced investor. He had already had a couple of rental properties, but he knew nothing about wholesaling. He got that first deal done, made like $6,500. He said $6,000 on the tape, but it was really $6,500. And then we transitioned into phase 2, and that took a little bit longer because phase 2 always takes a little bit longer. But he did get that first deal done in I think about 3 to 4 weeks, even though he sort of, like he said, messed up and had to go back and go through it again. But got $6,500 check in about 2-3 weeks, and then he got a second check for $25,000 about 2 or 3 months later. And then he sent me this nice, email with a picture with him holding the check saying, hey, Sherman, made $31,550 in 90 days. And at the time, Yasmin was working for, she was doing our website stuff and social media stuff. And so I asked her to go out and, get an interview, and he was in Baltimore or something. She didn't have to go all the way out to Cumberland Gap either, but they did wind up connecting in like either Baltimore or Frederick, something like that. And he was no, they actually went to the house. The house was in somewhere north of Frederick, so she didn't have to go out there. So in any event, I share that with you because that's kind of what I expect from you guys. We're going to get that first deal done, put it on autopilot, and then pivot to phase 2. And the one thing he did do right was get phase 1 down and then phase 2, because if we get phase 1 down, phase 2 just becomes so much easier. Okay. So anyway, on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being I'm done with you, Sherman, leave me alone. 5 being, yeah, this is pretty good stuff, and I'm going to hang in there because we only got about a week and a half left. Tell me what you think. Oh, I got a 10 tonight. Look at that. Woo! 5 plus, 5, 5, 5. Thank you, guys. So you guys know the drill. If you didn't do the homework yesterday, please go back and do that. Download the app and just play with it. Just have fun with it. And then tomorrow, I'll be sending you an email that'll have the week 2 packet that's going to have all of the Maryland law. It's going to have a copy of the buyer-broker agreement, print out the buyer-broker agreement, which is about a page and a half. Just be prepared to discuss it. You don't need to sign anything. And then show up tomorrow or as soon as I drop the link and listen to the Waterboy. If you want to also print out the Waterboy transcript so you can have a place to take some notes. And then I'll reconnect with you guys the day after tomorrow at our regularly scheduled time inside the Facebook group. Okay. Thank you guys. Appreciate you. Appreciate you very much. And I'll see you.